Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated. To the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, Berkshire's gain in net worth during 2016 was $27.5 billion, which increased the per share book value of both our Class A and Class B stock by 10.7%. Over the last 52 years, that is since present management took over, per share book value has grown from $19 to $172,108, a rate of 19% compounded annually. All per share figures used in this report apply to Berkshire A shares. Figure for the B shares are 1 to 1,500th of those shown for A. During the first half of those years, Berkshire's net worth was roughly equal to the number that really counts, the intrinsic value of the business. The similarity of the two figures existed. Then, because of the most resources were deployed in marketable securities that were regularly undervalued to their quoted prices, less a tax that would be incurred if they were to be sold in Wall Street parlance, our balance sheet was then in very large part market to market. By the early 90s, however, our focus was changing to the outright ownership of business, a shift that materially diminished the relevance of balance sheet figures. That disconnect occurred because the accounting rules commonly referred to as GWAP that apply to companies with a controlled different amount, ways from those used to value marketable securities. Specifically, the accounting for business we own requires that carrying value of losers be written down with their failures become apparent. Winners, conversely, are never revalued upwards. We've experienced both outcomes, as is the case in marriage. Business acquisitions often deliver surprises after the I do's. I've made some term purchases paying far too much for the economic good of companies we acquired that later led to goodwill write-offs and to consequent reductions in Berkshire's book value. We've also had some winners among the business we've purchased. A few of the winners very big, but have not written those up by a penny. We have no quarrel with the asymmetrical accounting that applies here, but over time it necessarily widens the gap between Berkshire's intrinsic value and its book value. Today, the large and growing unrecorded gains that our winners produce an intrinsic value for Berkshire shares that far exceeds their book value. The overage is truly huge in our property casualty insurance business and significant also in many other operations. Over time, stock prices gravitate towards intrinsic value. That's what happened at Berkshire. In fact, explaining why the company's 52-year market price gain shown on the facing page materially exceeds its book value gain. What do we hope to accomplish? Charlie Munger, Berkshire's vice chairman, my partner, and I expect Berkshire's normalized earning power per share to increase every year. Actual earnings, of course, will sometimes decline because of periodic weakness in the U.S. economy. In addition, insurance mega catastrophes or other industry-specific events may occasionally reduce earnings at Berkshire, even when most American businesses are doing well. It's our job, though, to over time deliver significant growth, bumpy or not. After all, their stewards of capital, Berkshire directors have opted to retain all earnings. Indeed, in both 2015 and 2016, Berkshire ranked first among American business in the dollar volume of earnings retained each year, reinvesting many billions of dollars more than did the runner-up. Those reinvested dollars must earn their keep. Some years the gains in underlying earning power will achieve will be minor. Very occasionally the cash register will ring loud. Charlie and I have no magic plan to add earnings except to dream big and to be prepared mentally and financially to act fast when opportunities present themselves. Every decade or so, dark clouds will fill the economic skies and they will briefly rain gold. When downpours of that sort occur, it's imperative that we rush outdoors carrying wash tubs, not teaspoons, and that we will do. I earlier described our gradual shift from a company obtaining most of its gains from investment activities to one that grows in value by owning businesses. Launching that transition, we took baby steps, making small acquisitions whose impact on Berkshire profits was dwarfed by our gains from marketable securities. Despite that cautious approach, I made one particular egregious error. Acquiring Dexter Shoe for $434 million in 1993, Dexter's values promptly went to zero. The story gets worse. I used stock for the purchase, giving the sellers 25,203 shares of Berkshire that at year-end 2016 were worth more than $6 billion. That wreck was followed by three key happenings, two positive, one negative, that set us firmly in our present course. At the beginning, in 1996, we acquired a half of Geico we didn't already own, a cash transaction that changed our holding for a portfolio investment into a wholly owned operating business. Geico, with its almost unlimited potential, quickly became the centerpiece around which we built what I believe is now the world's premier property casualty business. Unfortunately, I followed the Geico purchase by foolishly using Berkshire stock, a boatload of stock, to buy General Re Insurance in late 1998 after some early problems. General Re has become a fine insurance operation that we prized. It was nevertheless a terrible mistake on my part to issue 272,200 shares of Berkshire in buying General Re, an act that increased our outstanding shares by whopping 21.8%. My error caused Berkshire shareholders to give far more than they received. Our practice, despite the biblical endorsement, is far from blessed when you are buying businesses. Early in 2000, I atoned for that folly by buying 76% since grown to 90% of Mid-American Energy, a brilliantly managed utility business that has delivered us many large opportunities to make profitable and socially useful investments. The Mid-American cash purchase I was learning firmly launched us on our present course of 1 continuing to build our insurance operation. 2, energetically acquiring large and diversified non-insurance business. And 3, largely making our deals from internally generated cash. Today, I would rather prep for a colonoscopy than issue Berkshire shares. Our portfolio of bonds and stocks emphasized, though, it has continued in the post-1998 period to grow and deliver us hefty capital gains, interest, and dividends. Those portfolio earnings have provided us major help in financing the purchase of businesses. Though unconventional, Berkshire's two-pronged approach to capital allocation give us a real edge. Here's a financial record since 1999 when the direction of our business began in earnest. During the 18-year period covered, Berkshire's outstanding shares grew by only 8.3%, with most of that increase occurring when we purchased BNSF, that I'm happy to say was once issued stock that made good sense. Year operations capital gains after tax earnings in billions of dollars. Year operations capital gains too. 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. 0.67, 0.94, 0.13, 3.72, 5.42, 5.05, 5.00, 9.31, 9.63, 0.89, 2.39, 0.92, 0.57, 2.73, 2.26, 3.53, 1.71, 3.58. 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2014, 2015, 2016. 9.64, 7.57, 11.09, 10.78, 12.60, 15.14, 16.55, 17.36, 17.57. Capital gains, 4.65, 0.49, 1.87, 0.52, 2.23, 4.34, 3.32, 6.73, 6.50, including interest and dividends from investments but excluding capital gains or losses. In very large part, this tabulation includes only realized capital gains or losses, and realized gains and losses are also included, however, when GWP requires that treatment. Our expectation is that investment gains will continue to be substantial, though totally random is the timing, and that these will supply significant funds for business purchases. Concurrently, Berkshire's superb core of operating CEOs will focus on increasing earnings at the individual business they manage, sometimes helping them grow by making bolt-on acquisitions. By avoiding the issuance of Berkshire stock, any improvement earnings will translate to equivalents per share gains. Our efforts to materially increase the normalized earnings of Berkshire will be aided, as they have been throughout our managerial tenure, by America's economic dynamism. One word sums up our country's achievements: miraculous. From a standing start 240 years ago, a span of time less than triple my days on Earth, Americans have combined human ingenuity, a market system, a tad of talented and ambitious immigrants, and the rule of law to deliver abundance beyond any dreams of our forefathers. You need to be an economist to understand how well our system has worked. Just look around you. See the 75 million owner-occupied homes, the bountiful farmland, the 260 million vehicles, the hyper-productive factories, the great medical centers, the talent-filled universities. You name it. They all represent a net gain for Americans from the barren lands, primitive structures, and meager output of 1776. Starting from scratch, America has amassed wealth totaling $90 trillion. It's true, of course, that American owners of home, autos, and other assets have often borrowed heavily to finance their purchases. If an owner defaults, however, his or her asset does not disappear or lose its usefulness. Rather, ownership customarily passes to an American lending institution that then disposes of it to an American buyer. Our nation's wealth remains intact. As Gertrude Stein put it, money is always there, but the pockets change. Above all, it's our market system and economic traffic cop ably directing capital, brains, and labor that has created America's abundance. The system has also been the primary factor in allocating rewards. Governmental redirection through federal, state, and local taxation has, in addition, determined the distribution of a significant portion of the bounty. America has, for example, decided that those citizens in productive years should help both the old and the young. Such forms aid, sometimes enshrined as entitlements, as are generally thought of as applying to the age. But don't forget that 4 million American babies are born each year with an entitlement to a public education. That societal commitment, largely financed at the local level, costs about $150,000 per baby. The annual cost total more than $600 billion, which is about 3.5% of GDP. However, our wealth may be divided. The mind-boggling amounts you see around belong almost exclusively to the Americans. Foreigners, of course, have claims on a modest portion of our wealth. Those holdings, however, are of little importance to our national balance sheet. Our citizens' only asset abroad are rough comparable in value. Early Americans, we should emphasize, were neither smarter nor more hardworking than those people who toiled century after century before them. But those ventures, some pioneers crafted a system that unleashed human potential, and their successors built upon it. This economic creation will deliver increasing wealth to our progeny far in the future. Yes, the buildup of wealth will be interrupted for short periods of time to time. It will not, however, be stopped. I'll repeat what I've both said in the past. Expect to say in the future years, babies born in America today are the luckiest crop in history. America's economic achievements have led to staggering profits for stockholders. During the 20th century, the Dow Jones Industrials advanced from 66 to 11,497, a 17,320% capital gain that was materially boosted by steadily increasing dividends. The trend continues by year in 2016. The index had advanced a further 72% to 19,763. Americans in business, and consequently a basket of stocks, is virtually certain to be worth far more than 3 years ahead. Innovation, productivity gains, entrepreneurial spirit, and abundance of capital will see that ever-present naysayers may prosper by marketing their gloomy forecast, but heaven help them if they act on nonsense they peddle. Many companies, of course, will fall behind and some will fail. Knowing of that sort of product market is dynamism. Moreover, the years ahead will occasionally deliver major market declines, even panics that will affect virtually all stocks. No one can tell you when these traumas will occur. Not me, not Charlie, not economists, not the media. Meg Connell of the New York Fed aptly describes the reality of panics. We spend a lot of time looking for systemic risks, and truth, however, it tends to find us. During this scary period, we should never forget two things. First, widespread fear is your friend as an investor because it serves a bargain purchase. Second, personal fear is your enemy. It will also be an award to investors who avoid high unnecessary costs and simply said, for an extended period with a collection of large conservatively financed American businesses will almost certainly do well. As for Berkshire, our size precludes a brilliant result. Prospective return falls all as assets increase. Nonetheless, Berkshire's collection of good business along with the company's impregnable financial strength, the owner-oriented culture should deliver decent results. We won't be satisfied with less. Share repurchases. In investment world, discussions about share repurchases often become heated, but it suggests that participants in this debate take a deep breath. Assessing the desirability of repurchases isn't that complicated. From the standpoint of existing shareholders, the purchases are always a plus, though the day-to-day impact of these purchases is usually minuscule. It's always better for a seller to have an additional buyer in the market. For continuing shareholders, however, purchases only make sense if the values are bought at a price below intrinsic value. When that rule is followed, the remaining shares experience an immediate gain in intrinsic value. Consider a simple analogy: if there's 3 equal partners in business worth $30,000, and one's bought out by the partnership for $900, each of the remaining partners realize an immediate gain of $50. If this exiting partner is paid $1,100, however, the continuing partners each suffer a loss of $50. The same as applies with corporations and their shareholders. Ergo, the question of whether a purchase action is value enhancing or value destroying for continuing shareholders is entirely purchase price dependent. It is puzzling, therefore, the corporate purchase announcement almost never refer to a price of which the purchases will be eschewed. That certainly wouldn't be the case if a management was buying an outside business. Their price would always factor into buy or pass decision. When CEOs or boards are buying a small part of their own company, though, they all too often seem oblivious to price. Would they behave similarly if they were managing a private company with just a few owners and were evaluating the wisdom of buying out of them? Of course not. It is important to remember that there are 2 occasions in which a purchase should not take place, even if the company shares are underpriced. One is when a business both needs all the available money to protect or expand its own operations. It is also uncomfortable adding further debt. Here, the internal need for funds should take priority. This exception assumes, of that course, that the business has a decent future awaiting it after the needed expenditures are made. The second exception, less common, realizes when a business acquisition or some other investment opportunity offers far greater value than do undervalued shares of the potential purchaser. Long ago, Berkshire itself often had to choose between these alternatives. At our present size, the issue is far less likely to arise. My suggestion, before even discussing the purchase, the CEO and his board should stand, join hands, and in unison declare what is smart at one price is stupid at another. To recap Berkshire's own purchase policy, I am authorized to buy large amounts of Berkshire shares at 120% or less book value because our board has concluded that purchase at that level clearly bring an instant material benefit to continuing shareholders. We estimate that 120% of book price is a significant discount to Berkshire's intrinsic value. A spread that's appropriate because calculation of intrinsic value can be precise. The authorization given me does not mean that we will prop our stock price at 120% of ratio. If that level is reached, we will instead attempt to blend the desire to make meaningful purchase of the value, creating price with related goals, not over-influencing the market. To date, repurchasing our shares has proven hard to do. That may well have been clear in describing our purchase policy and thereby have signaled our view that Berkshire intrinsic value is significantly higher than 120% of book value. If so, that's fine. Charlie and I prefer to see Berkshire shares sell in a fairly narrow range around intrinsic value, neither wishing them to sell at an unwarranted high price. It's no fun having owners who are disappointed with their purchases nor one too low. Furthermore, our buying out partners at a discount is not a particularly gratifying way of making money. Still, market circumstances would create a situation in which purchases would benefit both continuing and existing shareholders. If so, we will be ready ready to act. One final observation for this section is that as the subject of purchase has come to boil, some people have come close to calling them un-American, characterizing those corporate misdeeds that divert funds needed for productive endeavors. That simply isn't the case. Both American corporations and private investors are today awash in funds looking to be sensibly deployed. I'm not aware of any enticing project that in recent years has died for lack of capital. Call us if you have a candidate. Insurance. Let's look at now the Berkshire's various business, starting with our most important sector, insurance. The property casualty (P&C) branch of that industry has been the engine as propelled our growth since 1967. The year we acquired National Indemnity and its sister company, National Fire and Marine, for $8.6 million. Today, National Indemnity is the largest property casualty company in the world, as measured by net worth. One reason we were attracted to the PC business was its financial characteristics. PC insurance received premiums upfront and pay claims. Later, in extreme cases such as claims arising from exposure to asbestos, payments can stretch over many decades. This collect now pay later model leaves PC companies holding large sums money we call float. That will eventually go to others. Meanwhile, insurers get to invest this float for their own benefit. Though individual policies and claims come and go, the amount of float an insurer holds usually remain fairly stable in relation to premium volume. Consequently, as our business how it grows, so does our float. And how has it grown? Has the following table show. Year 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, 2016. Float in millions. $39, 237, 1,632, 27,871, 65,832, 91,577. We recently wrote a huge policy that increased float to more than $100 billion beyond that one-time boost. Floated Geico and several of our specialized operations almost certain to grow at a good clip. National Indemnity's insurance division, however, is a party to a number of large runoff contracts whose float is certain to drift downward. We may in time experience a decline in float. If so, the decline will be very gradual. At the outside, no more than 3% in a year. The nature of our insurance contract is such that we can never be subject to immediate or near-term demands for sums that are of significance or a cash resource. The structure is by design, and its key component is an equal financial strength of our insurance companies that will never be compromised. If our premiums exceed the total of our expense and eventual losses, our insurance operation registers an underwriting profit that adds to the investment income the float produces. When such a profit is earned, we enjoy the use of free money and, better yet, get paid for holding it. Unfortunately, the wish of all insurers to achieve this happy result creates intense competition so vigorous indeed that it sometimes causes the PC industry as a whole to operate at a significant underwriting loss. This loss in effect is what the industry pays to hold its float. Competitive dynamics almost guarantee that the insurance industry, despite the float income all its companies enjoy, will continue its dismal record of earning subnormal returns on tangible net worth as compared to other American businesses. This outsource is made by certain by the dramatically lower interest rates that now exist throughout the world. The investment portfolios of all PC companies, so not those of Berkshire, are heavily concentrated in bonds. As these high-yielding legacy investments mature and are replaced by bonds yielding a pittance, earnings from float will steadily fall for that reason, and others as well. It's a good bet the industry results over the next 10 years will fall short of those recorded in the past decade, particularly in the case of companies that specialize in insurance. Nevertheless, I very much like our own prospects. Berkshire and rival financial strength allow us far more flexibility in investing than that generally available to PC companies. The many alternatives available to us are always an advantage. Occasionally, they offer us major opportunities. When others are constrained, our choices expand. Moreover, our PC companies have an excellent underwriting record. Berkshire has now operated at an underwriting profit for 14 consecutive years. Our pre-tax gain for the period having totaled $28 billion. That record is no accident. Disciplined risk evaluation is the daily focus of all our insurance managers who know that while float is valuable, its benefits can be drowned by poor underwriting results. All insurers give that message lip service. At Berkshire, it is a religion, Old Testament style. So, how does our float affect intrinsic value? When Berkshire book value is calculated, the full amount of float is accepted as a liability, just as if we had to pay it out tomorrow and could not replenish it. But to think of float as a typical liability is a major mistake. It should instead be reviewed as a revolving fund. Daily pay old claims and related expenses, a huge $27 billion to more than 6 million claimants in 2016, and that reduces float, just as surely we each day write new business that will soon generate its own claims, adding to float. If our revolving float is both costless and long enduring, which is believed it will be, the true value of this liability is dramatically less than the accounting liability. Owning $1 in effect will never leave the premises because new business, almost certain to deliver a substitute's world direct, different from owing $1 that will go at the door tomorrow, not real place. The two types of liabilities, however, are treated as equals under GWAP. A partial offset is overstated liability liability is $15.5 billion goodwill asset that we incurred in buying our insurance companies, and that is included in our book value figure in very large part. That goodwill represents the price we paid for the float-generating capabilities of our insurance corporations. The cost of the goodwill, however, has no bearing on its true value. For example, if an insurance company sustains large and prolonged underwriting losses, any goodwill assets carried on the book should be deemed valueless, whatever its original cost. Fortunately, that does not describe Berkshire. Charlie and I believe that the true economic value of our insurance goodwill, what we would happily pay for float similar quality were we to purchase an insurance operation possessing it be far in excess of its historic carrying value. Indeed, almost the entire $15.5 billion we carry for goodwill in our insurance business was already in our books. In 2001, float was $28 billion, yet we have subsequently increased our float by $64 billion. Again, that in no way is reflected in our book value. This unrecorded asset is one reason, a huge reason, why we believe Berkshire's intrinsic business value far exceeds its book value. Berkshire's attractive insurance economics is only we have some terrific managers running disciplined operations and in most cases possess hard-to-replicate business models. Let me tell you about the major units. First, by float size, Berkshire Hathaway Reinsurance Group, managed by Ajit Jain. Ajit ensures a risk that no one else has desire or the capital to take on. His operation combines capacity, speed, decisiveness, most important, brains, in a manner unique in the insurance business. Yet he never exposed Berkshire to risks that are inappropriate in relation to our resources. Indeed, Berkshire is far more conservative in avoiding risks than most large insurers. For example, if the insurance industry should experience a $250 billion loss for some mega catastrophe, a loss about triple anything has ever experienced, Berkshire as a whole would likely record a large profit for the year. Our many streams of non-insurance earnings would see to that. Additionally, would remain awash in cash and be eager to write business in an insurance market that may well be disarray. Meanwhile, our other major insurance and reinsurers would be swimming in red ink if not facing insolvency. When Ajit entered Berkshire's office in Saturday, 1986, he did not have a day's experience in the insurance business. Nevertheless, Mike Goldberg, our manager of insurance, handed him the keys to our small and struggling insurance business. With that move, Mike achieved sainthood. Since then, Ajit has created tens of billions of value for Berkshire shareholders. If there were ever to be another Ajit and you could swap me for him, don't hesitate to make the trade. We have another insurance powerhouse in General Ray, managed until recently by Todd Montross. After 39 years at General Ray, Tad retired in 2016. Tad was a class act in every way, and we owe him a ton of thanks. Kerry Ray Gill, who has worked with Ajit for 16 years, now CEO of General Ray. At bottom, a sound insurance operation needs to adhere to 4 disciplines. It must 1. Understand all exposures that might cause a policy to incur losses. 2. Conservatively assess the likelihood of any exposure actually causing a loss and the probable cost if it does. 3. Set a premium that on average will deliver a profit after both prospective loss cost and operating expenses are covered. And 4. Be willing to walk away if the appropriate premium can be obtained. Many insurers pass the first 3 tests and flunk the 4th. They simply can't turn their back on businesses that is being eagerly ridden by their competitors at old line. The other guy's doing it, so we must as well. Spells trouble in any business, but in none more than insurance. Tad never listened to that nonsensical excuse for sloppy underwriting, and neither will Kara. Finally, there is Geico, and the company that set my heart afire 66 years ago and for which the flame still burns. Geico is managed by Tony Nicely, who joined the company at 18, completed 55 years of service in 2016. Tony became CEO of Geico in 1993, and since then the company has been flying. There is no better manager than Tony, who brings his combination of brilliance, dedication, and soundness to the job. The latter quality is essential to sustain success. As Charlie says, it's a great to have a manager with an IQ of 160 IQ, unless he thinks it's 180. Like Ajit, Tony has created tens of billions of value for Berkshire. On my initial visit to Geico in 1951, I was blown away by the huge cost advantage the company enjoyed over the giants of the industry. It was clear to me that Geico would succeed because it deserved to succeed. The company's annual sales were then $8 million in 2016. Geico did that much business every 3 hours of the year. Auto insurance is a major expenditure for most family. Savings matter to them, and only low-cost operation can deliver those. In fact, at least 40% of the people reading this letter can save money by insuring with Geico, so stop reading right now and go to geico.com or call 800-847-7536. Geico's low costs create a moat, an enduring one that competitors are unable to cross. As a result, the company gobbles up market share year after year, ending 2016 with about 12% of the industry volume. That's up from 25.5% in 1995, the year Berkshire acquired control of Geico. Employment, meanwhile, grew from 8,575 to 36,085. Geico's growth accelerated dramatically during the second half of 2016. Loss costs throughout the auto insurance industry had been increasing at an unexpected pace, and some competitors lost their enthusiasm for taking on new customers. Geico's reaction to the profit squeeze, however, was to accelerate its new business efforts. We like to make hay while the sun sets, knowing that it will surely rise again. Geico continues in a role as I send you this letter. When insurance prices increase, people shop more, and when they shop, Geico wins. Have you called yet? 800-847-7536 or go to geico.com. In addition to our three major insurance operations, we own a collection of smaller companies that primarily write commercial coverages. In aggregate, these companies are a large, growing, and valuable operation that consistently delivers an underwriting profit, usually one much superior to that reported by their competitors. Over the past 14 years, this group has earned $4.7 billion from underwriting, about 13% of its premium volume, while increasing its float from $943 million to $11.6 billion. Less than 3 years ago, we formed Berkshire Hathaway Specialty Insurance, BHSI, which is included in this grouping. Our first decision was to put Peter Eastwood in charge, a move that proved to be a home run. We expected significant losses in the early years, while Peter built the personal infrastructure needed for worldwide operations. Instead, he and his crew delivered significant underwriting profits. Throughout the startup period, BHSI's volume increased 40% in 2016, reaching $1.3 billion. It's clear to me that the company is destined to become one of the world's leading PC insurers. Here's a recap of pre-tax underwriting earnings and float by division. Insurance operations: BH Insurance, General Re, Geico, other primary. Underwriting profit 2016, $822 million, $190, $462, $657, total of $2,131. 2015, $421, $132, $460, $824, $1,837 total. 2016, $45,081, $7,699, $17,148, $11,649, $91,577 total. 2015, $44,108, $18,560, $15,148, $9,906, $87,722. Berkshire's great managers' premier financial strength and range of business models protected by wide amount to something unique in the insurance world. This assemblage of strength is a huge asset for Berkshire shareholders that time will only make more valuable. Regulated capital-intensive business. Our BNSF Railroad and Berkshire Hathaway Energy, BHE, are 90% owned utility business share important characteristic that distinguish them from Berkshire's other activities. Consequently, we assigned them their own section in this letter and split out their combined financial statistics in our GWP balance sheet and income statement. These two very major companies accounted for 33% of Berkshire's after-tax operating earnings last year. A key characteristic of both companies is their huge investment in very long-lived regulated assets, with these partially funded by large amounts of long-term debt that is not guaranteed by Berkshire. Our credit is in fact not needed because each company has earning power that even under terrible economic conditions would far exceed its interest requirements. Last year, for example, it's a disappointing year for railroads. BNSF's interest coverage was more than 6 to 1. Our definition of coverage is the ratio of earnings before interest and taxes to interest, not EBITDA. Interest, a commonly used measure we view seriously flawed. At BHE, meanwhile, two factors ensure the company's ability to service that under all the circumstances. First is common to all utilities, recession-resistant earnings from which result from these companies offering an essential service for which demand is remarkably steady. The second is enjoyed by few other utilities and ever-widening diversity of earnings streams which shield BHE from being seriously harmed by any single regulatory body. These many sources of profit, supplemented by the inherent advantage of the company being owned by a strong parent, have allowed BHE and its utility subsidiaries to significantly lower their cost of debt. That economic fact benefits both of us and our customers. All told, BHE and BNSF invested $8.9 billion in plant equipment last year, a massive commitment to their segment of America's infrastructure. We relish making such investments as long as they promise reasonable returns, and on that front we put a large amount of trust and future regulation. Our confidence is justified both by our past experience and by the knowledge that society will forever need huge investment in both transportation and energy. It is self-interest of government to treat capital providers in a manner that will ensure the continued flow of funds to essential projects. It is concomitantly in our self-interest to conduct our operations in a way that earns the approval of our regulators and the people they represent. Low prices are a powerful way to keep these constituencies happy. In Iowa, BHE's average retail rate is 7.1 cents per kilo kWh. Alliant, the other major electric utility in the state, averages 9.9 cents. Here are the comparable industry figures for adjacent states: Nebraska 9.0 cents, Missouri 9.5 cents, Illinois 9.2 cents, Minnesota 10.0 cents. National average is 10.3 cents. We have promised Iowans that our base rates will not increase until 2029 at the earliest. Our rock bottom prices add up to real money for paycheck-strapped customers. At BNSF, price comparisons between major railroads are far more difficult to make because of significant differences in both their mix of cargo and the average distance a load is carried. To supply a very crude measure, however, our revenue per ton mile was 3 cents last year, while shipping costs for customers for the other four major U.S.-based railroads range from 4 cents to 5 cents. Both BHE and BNSF have been leaders in pursuing planet-friendly technology in wind generation. No state comes close to rivaling Iowa, where last year's the megawatt hours we generated from wind equaled 55% of all megawatt hours sold to our Iowa retail customers. New wind projects that are underway will take that figure to 89% by 2020. Bargain basement electric rates carry second-order benefits with them. Iowa has attracted large high-tech installations both because of its low prices for electricity, which data centers use in huge quantities, and because most tech CEOs are enthusiastic about using renewable energy. When it comes to wind energy, Iowa is the Saudi Arabia of America. BNSF, like other Class 1 railroads, uses only a single gallon of diesel fuel to move a ton of freight almost 500 miles. Those economic make railroads 4 times as fuel efficient as trucks. Furthermore, railroads alleviate highway congestion and the taxpayer-funded maintenance expenditures that come with heavier traffic in a major way. Also, BHE and BNSF own the asset that are of major importance to our country, as well as shareholders of Berkshire. Here are the key financial figures for both. BNSF, earnings in millions. Revenue, operating expenses, operating earnings before interest and rate and taxes, interest net, income taxes, net earnings. Earnings in millions, 2016, $19,829, $13,144, $6,685, $992, $2,124, $3,569, 2015, $21,967, $14,264, $7,703, $928, $2,527, $4,248, 2014, $23,239, $16,237, 7,002, 833, 2,300, $3,869. Berkshire Hathaway Energy, 90% owned, earnings in millions. UK Utilities, Iowa Utility, Nevada Utilities, Pacific Corp, primarily Oregon, Utah, gas pipelines, Northern Natural and Kern River, Canadian Transmission Utility, renewable projects, home services, other, net, operating earnings before corporate interest and taxes, interest, income taxes, net earnings, earnings applicable to Berkshire. 2016, $367, $392, $559, $1,105, $413, $147, $157, $225, $73, $3,438, $465, $431, $2,542, $2,287. 2015, $460, 290, 586, 1026, 401, 170, 175, 191, 49, 3350, 499, 481, 2370, 2132, 2014, 527, 2070, 549, 1010, 379, 16, 194, 139, 54, 3138, 427, 616, 2095, 1882. Home service may appear out of place in the above table, but it came with our purchase of Mid-American, now BHE, in 1999. We are lucky that it did. Home Services own 38 realty companies with more than 29,000 agents who operate in 28 states. Last year, it purchased 4 realtors, including Holy and Lawrence, and the leaders in New York, Westchester County, in a transaction that closed shortly after year-end. In real estate parlance, representing either a buyer or seller is called a side, with the representation of both counting as 2 sides. Last year, our own realtors participated in 2,444,000 sides, totaling $86 billion in volume. Home Service also franchises many operations throughout the country that use our name. We, like both aspects of real estate business, expect to acquire many realtors and franchises during the next decade. Manufacturing, service, and retailing operations. Our manufacturing, service, and retailing operations sell products ranging from lollipops to jet airplanes. Let's look, though, at a summary balance sheet and earnings statement for the entire group. Balance sheet, 12/31/16 in millions. Assets, cash and equivalent, accounts and notes receivable, inventory, other current assets, total current assets, goodwill, and other intangibles. Fixed assets, other assets, $8,073, $11,883, $15,727, $1,039, $36,022, $71,473, $18,915, $3,183, $129,593 total. Liabilities and equity, notes payable, other current liabilities, total current liabilities, deferred taxes, term debt and other liabilities, non-controlling interest, Berkshire equity. $2,054, $12,464, $14,518 total. $12,044, $10,943, $579, $91,509, $129,593. Earnings statements in millions. Revenues, operating expenses, interest expense, pre-tax earnings, income taxes, non-controlling interest, net earnings. 2016, $120,059, $111,383, $214, $8,462, $2,831, $5,631. 2015, $175,825, $100,607, 103, 7,115, 2,432, 4,683, 2014, 97,689, 90,788, 109, 6,792, 2,324, 4,468. Included in this financial summary are 44 businesses that report directly to headquarters, but some of these companies in turn have many individual operations under their umbrella. For example, Marmon has 175 separate business units having widely disparate markets, and Berkshire Hathaway Automotive owns 83 dealerships operating in 9 states. This collection of business is truly a motley crew. Some operations measured by earnings on leveraged net tangible assets enjoy traffic returns that in a couple of instances exceed 100%. Most are solid business generating good returns in the area of 12% to 20%. A few, however, these are serious blunders I made in my job of capital allocation produce very poor returns. In most cases, I was wrong when I originally sized up the economic characteristics of these companies or the industries in which they operate, and we are now paying the price for my misjudgments. In a couple of instances, I stumbled in assessing either the fidelity or ability of incumbent managers or ones I later put in place. I will commit more errors, you can count on that. Fortunately, Charlie, never bashful, is around to say no to my worst ideas. Viewed as single entity, the companies in the manufacturing, service, and retailing group are an excellent business. They employed an average $24 billion of net tangible assets during 2016, and despite their holding large quantities of excess cash and carrying very little debt, earned 24% after tax on that capital. Of course, a business with terrific economics can be a bad investment if it is bought too high a price. We have paid substantial premium to net tangible assets for most of our businesses, a cost that is reflected in the large figure we show on our balance sheet for goodwill and other intangibles. Overall, however, we are getting a decent return on the capital we have deployed in the sector. Absent a recession, earnings from the group will likely grow in 2017. In part because of Duracell and Precision Castparts both bought in 2016 will for the first time contribute a full year's earnings to this group. Additionally, Duracell incurred significant transitional costs in 2016 that will not recur. We have far too many companies in this group to comment on them individually. Moreover, their competitors, both current and potential, read this report in a few of our business. We might be disadvantaged of outsiders' newer numbers. Therefore, in certain of our operations that are not of outside material to an evaluation of Berkshire, we only disclose what is required. You can nevertheless find a good bit of detail about many of our operations in pages 90 and 94. Be aware, though, that it's the growth of Berkshire Forest that counts. It would be foolish to focus over intently on any single tree. For several years, I have told you that income and expense data shown in the section does not conform to GAAP. I have explained this divergence occurs primarily because of the GAAP ordered rules regarding purchase accounting adjustment that requires the full amortization of certain intangibles over periods averaging about 19 years. In our opinion, most of these amortization expenses are not truly an economic cost. Our goal is in diverging from GAAP in section to present the figures to you in a manner reflecting the way in which Charlie and I view and analyze them. On page 54, we itemize $15.4 billion of intangibles that are yet to be amortized by the annual charges to earnings. More intangibles to be amortized will be created as we make new acquisitions. On that page, we show that the 2016 amortization charge to GWP earnings was $1.5 billion, up $385 million from 2015. My judgment is that about 20% of the 2016 charge is a real cost. Eventually, amortization charges fully write off the related asset. When that happens, at the 15-year mark, the GWP earnings we report will increase without any true improvement in the underlying economics of Berkshire's business. My gift to my successor. Now that I've described GWP expense that I believe to be overstated, let me move on to a less pleasant distortion produced by accounting rules. The subject this time is GWP prescribed depreciation charges, which are necessarily based on historical cost, yet in certain cases, those charges materially understate true economic cost. Countless words were different about this phenomenon in the 1970s and early 1980s when inflation was rampant. As inflation subsided, thanks to heroic actions by Paul Volcker, the inadequacy of depreciation charges became less of the issue, but the problem still prevails big time. In many of the railroad industry where current cost for many depreciable items far outstrip historical costs, the inevitable result is that reported earnings throughout the railroad industry are considerably higher than the true economic earnings. At BNSF, to get down to particular, our GWP depreciation charge last year was $2.1 billion, but were we to spend the sum that no more annually, our railroad would soon deteriorate and simply become less competitive. The reality is that simply to hold our own, we need to spend far more than the cost we show for depreciation. Moreover, a wide disparity will prevail for the decades. All that said, Charlie and I love our railroad, which was one of our better purchases. Too many managements, and the number seems to grow every year, are looking for any means to report and indeed future adjusted earnings that are higher than their company's GWP earnings. earnings. There are many ways for practitioners to perform this ledger domain. Two of their favorites are the omission restructuring costs and the stock-based compensation expenses. Charlie and I want management and their commentary to describe unusual items, good or bad, that affect GWP numbers. After all, the reason we look at these numbers of the past is to make estimates for the future, but the management that regularly attempts to wave away very, very real costs by highlighting adjusted per share earnings make us nervous. That's because bad behavior is contagious. CEOs who look for ways to report high numbers tend to foster a culture in which subordinates strive to be helpful as well. Goals like that can lead, for example, to insurance underestimating their loss reserves, a practice that have destroyed many industry participants. Charlie and I cringe when we hear analysts talk admiringly about management who always make the numbers. In truth, business is too unpredictable for the numbers always to be met. Inevitably, surprises occur when they do. A CEO who's focused and centered on Wall Street will be tempted to make up the numbers. Let's get back to the favorites that don't count. This manager, starting with restructuring. Berkshire, I would say, has been restructuring from the first day we took over in 1965, owning only a northern textile business, and then gave us no other choice. And today, a fair amount of restructuring occurs every year at Berkshire. That's because there are always things that need change in our hundreds of business. Last year, as I mentioned earlier, we spent significant sums getting Duracell in shape for the decades ahead. We have never, however, singled out restructuring charges and told you to ignore them and estimated our normal earning power. If there were to be some truly major expenses in a single year, I would, of course, mention it in my commentary. Indeed, when there is total rebasing of a business, such as occurred when Kraft and Heinz merged, it is imperative that for several years, the huge one-time cost of rationalizing the combined operations be explained clearly to owners. That's precisely what the CEO of Kraft Heinz has done, in a manner approved by the company's directors, who include me. But to tell owners year after you don't count this, when management simply making business adjustments that are necessary, is misleading, and too many analysts and journalists fall for this baloney. The stock compensation is not an expense, is even more cavalier. CEOs who go down that road are in effect saying to shareholders, if you pay me a bundle of options or restricted stock, don't worry about its effect on earning, I'll just adjust it anyway. To explore this maneuver further, join me for a moment in a visit to make-believe accounting laboratory whose sole mission is to juice Berkshire's reported earnings. Imaginative technicians await us, eager to show their stuff. Listen carefully while I tell these enablers that stock-based compensation usually comprises at least 20% of total compensation for the top 3 or 4 executives at most large companies. Pay attention to as I explain that Berkshire has several hundreds of such executives as subsidiaries and pays them similar amounts, but uses only cash to do so. I further confess all that lacking imagination have counted all these payments to Berkshire executive as an expense. My accounting minions suppress a giggle and immediately point out that 20% of what is paid there's Berkshire managers is tantamount to cash paid in lieu of stock-based compensation is too, therefore not a true expense. So presto, Berkshire too can have adjusted earnings. Back to reality, if CEO wants to leave out stock-based compensation in reporting earnings, they should be required to affirm to their owners one of two propositions: why items of value used to pay employees are not a cost, or why payroll costs should be excluded when calculating earnings. During the accounting nonsense that flourished during the 1960s, the story was told of a CEO who was his company revved up to go public, asked prospective auditors, what is 2 plus 2? The answer to that one, the assignment, of course, was, what number do you have in mind? Finance and financial products are through leasing and rental operations are conducted by CORT, furniture, extra, semi-trailers, and Marmon, primarily tank cars, but also freight cars, intermodal tank containers, and cranes, each in leader in its own field. We also include Clayton Homes in this section. This company receives most of its revenues from the sale of manufactured homes, but derives the bulk of its earnings from its very large mortgage portfolio. Last year, Clayton became America's largest home builder, delivering 42,075 units that accounted for 5% of all the American homes. In fairness, other large builders do for more dollar volumes than Clayton because they sell site-build homes that command much higher prices. In 2015, Clayton branched out, purchasing its first site builder. 2 similar acquisitions followed in 2016, and more will come. Site-built houses are expected to amount to 3% or so of Clayton's unit sales in 2017, and unlikely to deliver about 14% of its dollar volume. Even so, Clayton's focus will always be manufactured homes, which account for about 70% of new American homes costing less than $150,000. Clayton manufactures closely to one-half of the total, as far cry from Clayton's position in 2003. When Berkshire purchased the company, it then ranked in the industry in units sold and employed 6,731 people. Now, when its new acquisition are included, the employee count is 14,677, and that number will increase in the future. Clayton's earnings in recent years have materially benefited from extraordinarily low interest rates. The company's mortgage loans to home buyers are fixed rates and for long terms, averaging about 25 years at inception. Clayton's own borrowings are short-term credit credits that reprice frequently when rates plunge. Clayton's earnings from his portfolio greatly increased. We normally would shun that kind of lend long, borrow short approach, which can cause major problems for financial institutions. As a whole, however, Berkshire is always asset sensitive, meaning that higher short-term rates will benefit our consolidated earnings, even as they hurt at Clayton. Last year, Clayton had to foreclose on 8,304 manufactured housing mortgages, about 2.5% of its total portfolio. Customer demographics help explain that percentage. Clayton's customers are usually lower-income families with mediocre credit scores, many are supported by jobs that will financial profiles that won't be damaged by divorce or death to an extent that would not be typical for a high-income family. Those risks that our customers face are partly mitigated because almost all have a strong desire to own a home and because they enjoy reasonable monthly payments that average only $587, including the cost of insurance and property taxes. Clayton also has long had programs that help borrowers through difficulties. The two most popular are loan extension and payments forgiveness. Last year, about 11,000 borrowers received extension and 3,800 had. $3.4 million of scheduled payments permanently canceled by Clayton. The company does not earn interest or fees when these loss mitigation moves are made. Our experience is that 93% of borrowers helped through these programs in the last 2 years now remain in their homes since we lose significant sums on foreclosures losses. Last year, total $150 million. Our assistance programs ended up helping Clayton as well as borrowers. Clayton and Berkshire have been a wonderful partnership. Kevin Clayton came to us with the best-in-class management group and culture. Berkshire in turn provided unmatched staying power when the manufactured home industry fell apart during the Great Recession as other lenders to the industry vanished. Clayton supplied credit not only to own dealers but also dealers who sold the product with competitors. At Berkshire, we never count synergies when we acquired companies truly important. Once, however, surfaced after a purchase of Clayton, Marmon's rail car business experienced a major slowdown in demand last year, which will cause earnings to decline in 2017. Fleet utilization was 91% in December, down from 97% a year earlier, with the drop particularly severe at the large fleet we purchased from General Electric in 2015. Marmon's crane containers rentals have weakened as well. Big swings in railcar demand have occurred in the past and they will continue. Nevertheless, we very much like this business and expect decent returns on equity capital over the years. Tank cars are Marmon's specialty. People often associate tank cars with the transportation of crude oil. In fact, they're essential to a great variety of shippers. Over time, we expect to expand our railcar operation. Meanwhile, Marmon is making a number of bolt-on acquisitions whose results are included in the manufacturing, service, and retail section. Here's the pre-tax earnings recap for our finance-related companies. Berkshire, our 50% share, Clayton Court, Marmon Containers and Cranes, Marmon Railcars Extra, net financial income, excludes capital gain and losses, 2016, 91, 744, 60, 126, 654, 179, 276, total $2,130, 74, in 2015, 706, 55, 192, 546, 172, 341, $2,086 total. 2014, $122, 558, 49, 238, 442, 147, 283, $1,839 total. Investments. Below, we list our 15 common stock investments that are year-end had the largest market value. We exclude Arcraft, Heinz Holding because Berkshire is part of a control group and therefore must account for this investment of the equity method. The 325,442,152 short Berkshire's own of Kraft Heinz are carried on our balance sheet at a GWP figure of $15.3 billion and had a year-end market value of $28.4 billion. Our cost basis for the share is $9.8 billion. Shares: 151,610,700, 61,242,652, 6,789,054, 400 million, 54,934,718, 111,390,580. 81,230,303, 24,669,778, 74,587,892, 22,169,930, 43,203,775, 101,859,335, 26,620,884, 43,387,980, 500 million. Company: American Express Company, Apple Incorporated, Charter Communications Incorporated, the Coca-Cola Company, Delta Airlines Inc., the Goldman Sachs Group Incorporated, International Business Machines Incorporated, Moody's Corporation, Phillips 66, Sanofi, Southwest Airlines Company, U.S. Bancorp, United Continental Holdings Incorporated, USG Corporation, Wells Fargo and Company, others. Total common stocks carried in market, percentage of company owned, 16.8, 1.1, 2.5, 9.3, 7.5, 2.9, 8.5, 12.9, 14.4, 1.7, 7.0, 6.0, 8.4, 29.7, 10.0, 12/31/16. Cost: In millions, $1,287, $6,747, $1,210, $1,299, $2,299, $654, $13,815, $248, $5,841, $1,695, $1,757, $3,239, $1,477, $836, $12,730, $10,697, $65,828. Market, 11,231, 7,093, 1,955, 16,584, 2,702, 2,727, 13,484, 2,326, 6,445, 1,791, 2,153, 5,233, 1,940, 1,253, 27,555, 17,560. Exclude shares held by pension funds of Berkshire subsidiaries. Those are actual purchase price and also our tax basis GWP cost. Differs in a few cases because of write-downs and have been required under GWP rules. Some of the stocks in the table are the responsibility of either Todd Combs or Ted Weschler, who work with me in managing Berkshire's investment. Each independently manages more than $10 billion. I usually learn about decisions they have made by looking at monthly trade sheets, including the $21 billion that two manages about $7.6 billion of pension trust assets of certain Berkshire subsidiaries. As noted, pension investments are not included in the preceding tabulations of Berkshire holdings. Excluded from the table but important is our ownership of $5 billion preferred stock issued by Bank of America. This stock, which pays us $300 million per year, also carries with it a very valuable warrant allowing Berkshire to purchase 700 million common shares of Bank of America for $5 billion at any time before September 2, 2021. At year-end, the privilege would have delivered us a profit of $10.5 billion if it wishes. The Berkshires can use its preferred shares to satisfy the $5 billion cost of exercising the warrant. If dividend rate of Bank of America common stock, now 30 cents annually, should rise above 44 cents before 2021, we would anticipate making cashless exchange of our preferred into common. If the common dividend remains below 44 cents, it is highly probable that we will exercise the warrant immediately before it expires. Many of our investees, including Bank of America, have been purchasing shares, some quite aggressively. We very much like this behavior because we believe their purchase shares have in most cases been underpriced. Undervaluations, after all, is why we own these positions. When a company grows and outstanding shares shrink, good things happen for shareholders. It is important for you to understand that 95% of the $86 billion of cash equivalents, which in mine includes U.S. Treasury bills shown on our balance sheet, are held by entities in the United States and consequently is not subject to any repatriation tax. Moreover, repatriation of the remaining funds would trigger only minor taxes because much of that money has been earned in countries that themselves impose meaningful corporate taxes. Those payments become an offset to U.S. tax when money is brought home. These explanations are important because many cash-rich American companies hold a large portion of their funds in jurisdiction imposing very low taxes, just as companies hope, and it will be proved right that the tax levied for bringing these funds to America will soon be materially reduced. In the meantime, these companies are limited to how they can use that cash. In other words, offshore cash and simply not worth as much cash held at home. Berkshire has had partial offset to the favorable geographical location of its cash, which most of it's held as our insurance subsidiaries. Though we have many alternatives for investing the cash, we do not have unlimited choices that we would enjoy if the cash were held by the parent company, Berkshire. We do have an ability annually to distribute large amounts of cash from our insurers to the parent, though here too there are limits. Overall cash held at our insurers is very, very valuable asset, but one slightly less valuable to us that is cash is held at the parent level. Sometimes the comment of the shareholders or media imply that we will own certain stocks forever. It's true that we own some stocks that I have no intention of selling for as far as the eye can see, and we're talking 2020 vision, but we have made no commitment that Berkshire will hold any of its marketable securities forever. Confusion about this point may have resulted from a too casual reading of Economic Principle 11 on pages 110 to 111, which has been included in our annual report since 1983, that principle covers controlled business, not marketable securities. This year, we've added the final sentence to number 11 to ensure that our owners understand what we regard any marketable securities available for sale, however unlikely such a sale now seems. Before we leave this investment section, a few educational words about dividends and taxes. Berkshire, like most corporations, net considerably more from dollar dividends, and it reaps from $1 of capital gains. That will probably surprise those of shareholders who are accustomed to thinking of capital gains as route to tax-favored returns. But here's a corporate math. Every $1 of capital gains that a corporation realizes carries with it 35 cents of federal income tax and often state income tax as well. The tax on dividends received from domestic corporations, however, is consistently lower, though rates vary depending on status of the recipient. For a non-insurance company, which describes Berkshire Hathaway, the parent, the federal taxes rate effectively 10 to 1/2 cents per $1 of dividends received. Furthermore, a non-insurance company that owns more than 20% of investee owes taxes of only 7 cents per $1 of dividends. That rate applies, for example, to substantial dividends we receive from our 27% ownership of Kraft Heinz, all held by the parent company. The rationale for the low corporate tax and dividends is that the dividend-paying investee has already paid its own corporate tax on the earnings being distributed. Berkshire insurance subsidiaries pay a tax rate and dividends that is somewhat higher than that applying to non-insurance companies. The rate is still, below 35%, hitting capital gains. Property casualty companies owe about 14% taxes on most dividends they receive. This tax rate falls to about 11% if they own more than 20% of a U.S.-based investee, and that's our tax lesson for today. The bet, or how your money finds its way to Wall Street. In this section, you will encounter early on the story of an investment bet I made 9 years ago, and next, some strong opinions I have about investing as a starter, though I want to briefly describe Long Bets as a unique establishment that played a role in the bet. Long Bets was seeded by Amazon's Jeff Bezos and operates as a non-profit organization that administers just what you guessed, long-term bets. The participant proposers post a proposition at longbets.org that will prove right or wrong at this distant date. Then they wait for contrary-minded party to take the other side of the bet. When the doubter steps forward, each side name was a charity that will be the beneficiary if its side wins. Park its wager with Long Bets and post a short essay defending its position on the Long Bets website. When the bet is concluded, Long Bets pay off the winning charity. Here are the examples of what you will find on Long Bet's very interesting site. In 2002, entrepreneur Mitch Kapor asserted that by 2029, no computer or machine intelligence will have passed a Turing test, which deals with whether a computer can successfully impersonate a human being. Inventor Ray Kurzweil took the opposing view. Each backed up his opinion with $10,000. I don't know who will win this bet, but I will confidently wager that no computer will ever replicate Charlie. That same year, Craig Mindy of Microsoft asserted that pilotless planes would routinely fly passengers by 2030, while Eric Schmidt of Google argued otherwise. The stakes were $1,000 each. To ease any heartburn Eric might be experiencing from his outsized exposure, I recently offered to take a piece of his action. He promptly laid off $500 with me. I like his assumption that I'll be around in 2030 to contribute my payment should we lose. Now to my bet and its history. In Berkshire 2005 annual report, I argued that active investment management by professional and aggregate over a period of years underperformed the returns achieved by rank amateurs who simply sat still. I explained that the massive fees levied by a variety of helpers would leave their clients again in aggregate worse off than if the amateurs simply invested in an unmanaged low-cost index fund. See pages 114 to 115 for a reprint of the argument as I originally started in the 2005 report. Subsequently, I publicly offered to wager $500,000 that no investment pro could select a set of at least 5 hedge funds wildly popular in high-fee investing vehicles would over an extended period match the performance of a managed S&P 500 index fund charging only token fees. I suggested a 10-year bet and named the low-cost Vanguard S&P fund as my contender. I then sat back and waited expectantly for a parade of fund managers who could include their own fund as one of the 5 to come forth and defend their occupation. After all, these managers urged others to bet billions on their abilities. Why should they fear putting a little of their own money on the line? What followed was a sound of silence, though there are thousands of professional investment managers who have amassed staggering fortunes by toting their stock. Selecting prowess, only one man, Ted Sades, stepped up my challenge. Ted was a co-manager of Protégé Partners, an asset manager that had raised money from limited partners to form a fund of funds. In other words, a fund that invested in multiple hedge funds. I hadn't known Ted before wager, but I like him and admire his willingness to put his money where his mouth was. He has been both straightforward with me and meticulous in supplying all the data that both he and I have needed to monitor the bet. For Protégé Partners side, our 10-year bet, Ted picked 5 funds whose results were to be averaged and compared against my Vanguard S&P indexed fund. The 5 he selected had invested their money in more than 100 hedge funds, which means that the overall performance of the funds would not be distorted by the good or poor results of a single manager. Each of funds, of course, operated with a layer of fees that sat above the fees charged by the hedge funds in which it had invested. In this doubling up arrangement, the larger fees were levied with the underlying hedge fund. Each of the fund imposed an additional fee for its presumed skills in selecting hedge fund managers. Here are the results for the first 9 years of the bet. Figures leaving no doubt that Girls Incorporated of Omaha, the charitable beneficiary, had a significant to get any bet winnings I earned will be the organization eagerly opening the mail next January. Year 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Gain to date. Fund of funds A, negative 16.5%, 11.3%, 5.9%, negative 6.3%, 3.4%, 10.5%, 4.7%, 1.6%, 2.9%, 8.7%. Fund of funds B, negative 22.3%, 14.5%, 6.8%, negative 1.3%, 9.6%, 15.2%, 4.0%, 2.5%, 1.7%, 28.3%. Fund of funds of C, 21.3%, negative 21.4%, 13.3%, 5.9%, 5.7%, 8.8%, 18.9%, 5.4%, negative 1.4%, 62.8%. Funds of D, D, negative 29.3%, 16.5%, 4.9%, negative 6.3%, 6.2%, 14.2%, 0.7%, 1.4%, 2.5%, 2.9%. Funds of E, negative 30.1%, 16.8%, 11.9%, negative 2.8%, 9.1%, 14.4%, negative 2.1%, 5.0%, 4.4%, 7.5%. S&P Index Fund, negative 37.0%, 26.6%, 15.0%, 2.1%, 16.0%, 32.3%, 13.6%, 1.4%, 11.9%, 85.4%. Footnote: under my agreement with Protégé Partners, the names of these funds of funds have never been publicly disclosed. I have received their annual audits. The compounded annual increase to date for the index fund is 7.1%, which is a return that easily would prove typical for the stock market over time. That's an important fact. A particularly weak time years for the market over the lifetime of this bet would have probably helped the relative performance of short hedge funds because many hold large short positions. Conversely, 9 years of exceptionally high returns from stocks would have provided a tailwind for index funds. Instead, we operate in what I could call a neutral environment. In it, the five funds delivered through 2016 an average of only 2.2% compounded annually. That means $1 million invested in those funds would have gained $220,000. $220,000. The index fund would meanwhile have gained $854,000. Bear in mind that every one of the 100 plus managers of the underlying hedge funds had a huge financial incentive to do their best. Moreover, the 5 funds managers that had selected were similarly incentivized to select the best hedge fund managers, possibly because 5 were entitled to performance fees based on the results of underlying funds. I'm certain that in almost all cases, the managers at both levels were honest, intelligent people, but the results for their investors were dismal, really dismal. And alas, the huge fixed fees charged by all of the funds and funds of funds involved fees were totally unwarranted by performance, were such that their managers were showered with compensation over the 9 years that have passed. As Gordon Gekko might have put it, fees never sleep. The underlying hedge fund managers in our bet received payments for their limited partners of likely average a bit under prevailing hedge fund standard of 2 and 20, meaning a 2% annual fixed fee, payable even when losses are huge, and 20% of profits with no clawback if good years were followed by bad ones. Under this lopsided agreement, a hedge fund operator's ability to simply pile up assets under management has made many of these managers extraordinarily rich, even as their investments have performed poorly. Still, we're not through with fees. Remember that there were the funds of fund managers to be fed. Well, these managers receive an additional fixed amount that was usually a set 1% of assets that, despite the terrible overall record of the 5 funds and funds have experienced a few good years and collected performance fees. Consequently, I estimate that over the 9-year period, roughly 60% of all gains achieved by the 5 funds of funds were diverted to 2 levels of managers. That was their misbegotten reward for accomplishing something far short of their many hundreds of limited partners could have effortlessly and with virtually no cost achieved on their own. In my opinion, the disappointing results for hedge fund investors that this bet exposed are almost certain to occur in the future. I laid out my reasons for that belief in a statement that was posted on the Long Bets website when the bet commenced, and that is still posted there years when I asserted. Over a 10-year period, commencing on January 1, 2008 and ending on December 31, 2017, the S&P 500 will outperform a portfolio of funds of hedge funds when performance is measured on the basis net of fees, costs, and expenses. A lot of very smart people set out to do better than average in security markets, call them active investors. Their opposites, passive investors, will by definition do about average. In aggregate, their positions will more or less approximate those of an index fund. Therefore, the balance of the universe, the active investors, must do about average as well. However, these investors will incur far greater costs, so in balance, their aggregate results after these costs will be worse than those of the passive investors. Costs skyrocket when large annual fees, large performance, and active trading costs are all added to the active investors' equation. Funds of their fees are superimposed on the large fees charged by the hedge funds in which the funds of funds are invested. A number of smart people are involved in running hedge funds, but to a great extent, their efforts are self-neutralizing, and their IQ will not overcome the costs they expose on investors. Investors, on average and over time, will do better with a low-cost index fund than with a group of funds of funds. So that was my argument, and now let me put into a simple equation. If Group A, active investors, and Group B, do-nothing investors, comprise the total investing universe, and B is destined to achieve average result before cost, so too must A. Whichever group has a lower cost will win. The academic in me requires me to mention that there is a very minor point, not worth detailing, that slightly modifies that this formulation. If Group A has exorbitant cost, its shortfall will be substantial. There are, of course, some skilled individuals who are likely to outperform the S&P over long stretches in my lifetime, though. I've identified early on only 10 professionals that I expected would accomplish this feat. There are no doubts many hundreds of people, perhaps thousands, whom I have never met, and whose abilities would equal those of people I've identified. The job, after all, is not impossible. The problem simply is that great majority of managers who attempt to overperform will fail. The probability is also very high that the person soliciting your funds will not be the exception of who does well. Bill Ruane, a truly wonderful human being and a man whom I identified 60 years ago, was almost certain to deliver superior investment returns over the long haul, said it well. In investment management, the progression is from the innovators to the imitators to the swarm incompetents. Further complicating the search for the rare high-fee manager who is worth his or her pay is the fact that some investment professionals, just as some amateurs, will be lucky over short periods. If 1,000 managers make a market prediction at the beginning of the year, it's very likely that the call of at least one will be correct for 9 consecutive years. Of course, 1,000 monkeys would be just as likely to produce seemingly all-wise profit, but there would remain a difference. The lucky monkey would not find people standing in line to invest with him. Finally, there are 3 connected realities that cause investing success to breed failure. First, a good record quickly attracts a torrent of money. Second, huge sums invariably act as an anchor or investment performance. What is easy with millions struggle with billions. Sob. Third, most managers will nevertheless seek new money because of their personal equation, namely, the more funds they have under management, the more their fees. These 3 points are hardly new ground. For me, in January 1966, when I was managing $44 million, I wrote my limited partners, I feel substantially greater size is more likely to harm future results than to help them. This might not be true for my own personal results, but is likely to be true for your results. Therefore, I intend to admit no additional partners to BPL. I've notified Susie that if we have any more children, it's up to her to find some other partnership for them. The bottom line, when trillions of dollars are managed by Wall Streeters charging high fees, it will usually be the managers who reap outsized profits, not the clients. Both large and small investors should stick with low-cost index funds. If a statue is ever erected to honor of the person who has done for most of the American investors, the hands-down choice should be Jack Bogle. For decades, Jack has urged investors to invest in ultra-low-cost index funds. In his crusade, he amassed only a tiny percentage of the wealth that has typically flowed to managers who have promised their investors large reward while delivering them nothing, or, as in our bet, less than nothing of added value. In his early years, Jack was frequently mocked by the investment management industry. Today, however, he has the satisfaction of knowing that he helped millions of investors realize far better returns on their savings than any otherwise would have returned. He is a hero to them and to me. Over the years, I've often been asked for investment advice, and in the process of answering, I've learned a good deal about human behavior. My regular recommendation has been a low-cost S&P 500 index fund to their credit. My friends who possess only modest means have usually followed my suggestion. I believe, however, that none of the mega-rich individuals, institutional pension funds has followed the same advice when I've given it to them. Instead, these investors politely thank me for my toss and depart to listen to the siren song of a high-fee manager, or in the case of many institutions, to seek out another breed of hyper-help called consultant. That professional, however, faces a problem. Can you imagine an investment consultant telling clients that year after year to keep adding to an index fund replicating the S&P 500? That would be career suicide. Large fears flowed to these hyper-helpers. However, they recommend small managerial shifts every year or so. That advice is so often delivered in esoteric gibberish. That explains why fashionable developed investment styles or current economic trends make shift appropriate. The wealthy are accustomed to feeling that in real life, a lot gets the best food, schooling, entertainment, housing, plastic surgery, sports ticket, you name it. Their money, they feel, should buy them something superior compared to what the masses receive. In many aspects of life, indeed, wealth does command top-grade products or services. For that reason, the financial elites, wealthy individuals, pension funds, college endowments, and the like have great trouble meekly signing up for a financial product or service that is available as well to people investing only a few $1,000s. The reluctance of the rich normally prevails, even though the product at issue is, on an expectancy basis, clearly the best choice. My calculation, admittedly very rough, is that the church by the elite for superior investment advice has caused it, in aggregate, to waste more than $100 billion over the past decade. Figure it out, even a 1% fee on future rental dollars adds up. Of course, not every investor who put the money in hedge funds 10 years ago lagged S&P returns, but I believe my calculation of the aggregate shortfall is conservative. Much of the financial damage befell pension funds for public employees. Many of these funds are woefully underfunded, in part because they have suffered double whammy: poor investment performance accompanied by huge fees. Their resultant shortfalls and their assets will for decades have to be made up by local taxpayers. Human behavior won't change. Wealthy individuals, pension funds, endowments, and the like will continue to feel they deserve something extra in investment advice. Those advisors who cleverly play that the expectation will get very rich. This year's a magic potion, maybe hedge funds. Next year, something else. The likely result from the period of promises is predicted in an adage. When a person's money meets a person with experience, the one with experience ends up with the money, and the one with money leaves with experience. Long ago, brother-in-law of mine, Homer Rogers, was a commission agent working in Omaha stockyards. I asked him how he induced a farmer rancher to hire him to handle the sale of their hogs or cattle to the buyers for the Big Four packers, Swift, Cudahy, Wilson, and Armour. After all hogs and the buyers were experts who knew the penny, how much any animal was worth. How then I asked Homer, could any sales agent and get any better result than any other? Homer gave me a pitying look and said, Warren, it's not how you sell him, it's not how you tell him. What worked in the stockyards continues to work in Wall Street. And finally, let me offer an olive branch to Wall Street. Many of them good friends of mine. Berkshire loves to pay fees, even outrageous fees to investment bankers who bring us acquisitions. Moreover, we have paid substantial sums for overperformance to our 2 in-house investment managers, and we hope to make even larger payments to them in the future. To get biblical, Ephesians 3:18, I know the height and depth of the length and the breadth of the energy flowing from that simple four-letter word, fees. When it is spoken to Wall Street and when the energy delivers value to Berkshire, I will cheerfully write a big check. The annual meeting. Last year, we partnered with Yahoo to air the first ever webcast of our annual meeting. Thanks to Anders Sewer and his Yahoo crew, the production was a success in all respects, registering 1.1 million unique visits in real-time viewing and 11.5 million more in replays, many of those to be sure called up by viewers interested in only certain segments of the webcast. Berkshire's thank you mail for initiating a webcast included many notes from three constituencies: the elderly who find travel difficult, the thrifty who find it expensive to travel to Omaha, and those who cannot attend the Saturday meeting for religious reasons. The webcast got attendance at last year's meeting about 37,000 people. We can't get a precise count, which was down about 10%. Nevertheless, both Berkshire subsidiaries and Omaha hotels and restaurants racked up huge sales. Nebraska Furniture Mart sales broke their 2015 record volume by 3%, with the Omaha store recording 1 week volume of $45.5 million. Our Berkshire exhibitors at CenturyLink were open from noon until 5 p.m. on Friday and drew a crowd of 12,000 bargain hunting shareholders. We will repeat those Friday shopping hours this year on May 5th. Bring money. The annual meeting falls on May 6th and will again be webcast by Yahoo, whose web address is https://finance.yahoo.com BRK livestream. The webcast will go live at 9 a.m. Central Daylight Time. Yahoo will interview directors, managers, stockholders, and celebrities before the meeting, and during the lunch break, both these interviews and meeting will be translated simultaneously into Mandarin. For those attending the meeting in person, the doors at the CenturyLink will open at 7 a.m. on Saturday to facilitate shopping prior to our shareholder movie, which begins at 8:30, and the question and answer period will start at 9:30 and run until 3:30 with a 1-hour lunch break at noon. Finally, at 3:45, we'll begin the formal shareholder meeting. It will run an hour, so that is somewhat longer than usual because the three proxy items are to be presented by their proponents, who will be given a reasonable amount of time to state their case. On Saturday morning, we will have our 6th International Newspaper Tossing Challenge. Our target will again be the porch of Clayton home, located precisely 35 feet from the throwing line. When I was a teenager, in my one brief flirtation with honest labor, I delivered about 500,000 papers, so I think I'm pretty good at this game. Challenge me, humiliate me, knock me down a peg. The papers will run 36 to 42 pages, and you must fold them yourself. No rubber bands allowed. The competition will begin about 7:45, and I'll take on 10 or so competitors selected a few minutes earlier by my assistant, Deb Bosinek. Your venue for shopping will be the 194,300 square foot hall that adjoins the meeting, and in which products from dozens of our subsidiaries will be for sale. Say hello to the many Berkshire managers who will be captaining their exhibits, and be sure to view the terrific BNSF railroad layout that salutes all of our companies. Your children and you will be enchanted with it. Brooks, our running shoe company, will again have a special commemorative shoe to offer at the meeting. After you purchase a pair, wear them on Sunday at 4th Annual Berkshire 5K and 8 a.m. race starting at CenturyLink. Full detail for participation will be included in the visitor guide that will be sent to you with your meeting credentials. Entrants in the race will find themselves running alongside many of Berkshire's managers, directors, and associates. Charlie and I, however, will sleep in. The fudge and peanut brittle we eat throughout the Saturday meeting takes its toll. Participation in the 5K grow every year. Help us set another record. A Geico booth in the shopping area will be staffed by a number of the company's top counselors from around the country. At least last year's meeting, we set a record for policy sales up to 21% from 2015. I predict we will be again up this year. So stop by for a quote. In most cases, Geico will be able to give you a shareholder discount, usually 8%. This special offer is permitted by 44 of the 51 jurisdictions in which we operate. One supplemental point: the discount is not additive if you qualify for another discount, such as that available to certain groups. Bring the details of your existing insurance and check out our price. We can save many of your real money. Spend the savings on other Berkshire products. Be sure to visit the Bookworm. This Omaha-based retailer will carry about 35 books and DVDs, among them a couple of new titles. The best book I read last year was Shoe Dog by Nike's Phil Knight. Phil is a very wise, intelligent, and competitive fellow who is also a gifted storyteller. The Bookworm will have all pies of Shoe Dog as well as several investment classics by Jack Bogle. The Bookworm will once again offer a history of the highlights and lowlights of the Berkshire's first 50 years. Non-attendees of the meeting can find the book on eBay. Just type in Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated celebrating 50 years of profitable partnership, 2nd edition. An attachment to the proxy material that is enclosed with this report explains how you can obtain the credential you will need for admission to both the meeting and other events. Keep in mind that airlines have sometimes jacked up prices for the Berkshire weekend, though I must admit I have developed some tolerance bordering on enthusiasm for that practice now that Berkshire has made large investments in America for major carriers. Nevertheless, if you're coming from far away compared to the cost of flying to Kansas City versus Omaha, the drive between the two cities is about 2 to 1.5 hours, and maybe that Kansas City can save you significant money. The savings for a couple could run to $1,000 or more. Spend that money with us. At Nebraska Furniture Mart, located on a 77-acre site on 72nd Street between Dodge and Pacific, we will again be having Berkshire weekend discount pricing. To obtain the Berkshire discount NFM, you must make your purchase between Tuesday, May 2nd, and Monday, May 8th inclusive, and must also present your meeting credential. The period special pricing will even apply to the products of several prestigious manufacturers that normally have ironclad rules against discounting, but which, in the spirit of our shareholder weekend, have made an exception for you. We appreciate your cooperation. During Berkshire weekend, NFM will be open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. on Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. From 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday, NFM is a hosting picnic, but you are all invited. This year, we have good news for shareholders in the Kansas City and Dallas metro markets who can't attend the meeting or perhaps prefer the webcast. From May 2nd through May 8th, shareholders who present meeting credentials or other evidence of their Berkshire ownership, such as brokerage statements, to their local NFM store will receive the same discounts enjoyed by those visiting the Omaha store. At Borsheims, we will again have 2 shareholders-only events. The first will be a cocktail reception from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Friday, May 5th. The second main gala will be held on Sunday, May 7th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday. Will remain open until 6 p.m. Remember, the more you buy, the more you save, or so my daughter tells me when we visit the store. We will have huge crowds at Borsheims through the weekend. For your convenience, therefore, shareholder price will be available from Monday, May 1st through Saturday, May 13th. During that period, please identify yourself as a shareholder either by presenting your meeting credential or brokerage statement showing you our own stock. On Sunday in the mall outside of Borsheims, Norman Beck, a remarkable magician and motivational speaker from Dallas, will bewilder onlookers on the upper level. We will have Bob Hammond and Sharon Osberg, 2 of the world's top bridge experts, available to play with our shareholders on Sunday afternoon. If they suggest wagering on the game, change the subject, I will join them at some point, and hope Reggie, Charlie, and Bill Gates will do so along. My friend Ariel Singh and Bill be in the mall as well on Sunday, take on challengers at table tennis. I met Ariel when she was 9, and even then I was unable to score a point against her. Ariel represented the United States in the 2012 Olympics. Now she's a senior at Princeton after interning last summer at JP Morgan Chase. If you don't mind embarrassing yourself, test your skills against her beginning at 1 p.m. Bill Gates did pretty well playing Ariel last year, so he may be ready to challenge her. My advice, bet on Ariel. Goretz will be open exclusively for Berkshire shareholders on Sunday, May 7th, serving from 1 p.m. until 10 p.m. To make a reservation at Goretz, call 402-551-3733 on April 3rd. But not before. Show your sophisticated dining by ordering the T-bone with the hash browns. We'll have the same 3 financial journalists lead the question and answer period at the meeting, asking Charlie and me questions that shareholders have submitted to them by email. The journalists and their email address are Carl Loomis, a prominent business journalist of her time, who may be emailed at loomisbrk@gmail.com, Becky Quick of CNBC at BerkshireQuestion@cnbc.com, and Andrew Ross Sorkin of the New York Times at AirSorkin@nytimes.com. From the questions submitted, each journalist will choose the 6 he or she decides are the most interesting and important to shareholders. The journalists have told me your question has the best chance of being selected if you keep it concise, avoid sending in the last moment, make it Berkshire related, and include no more than 2 questions in any email you send them. In your email, let the journalists know if you would like your name mentioned if your question is asked. An accompanying set of questions will be asked by 3 analysts to follow Berkshire this year. The insurance specialist will be Jay Gelb of Barclays. Questions that deal with our non-insurance operations will come from Jonathan Brandt of Ruane, Caniff and Goldfarb, and Greg Warren of Morningstar. Since what we will hope conducting a shareholders meeting, our hope is that the analysts and journalists will ask questions that add to our owners' understanding and knowledge of investment. These are Charlie nor I will get much as a clue about the questions that headed our way. Some will be tough for sure, and that's the way we like it. Multi-part questions aren't allowed. We want to give as many questioners as possible a shot at us. Our goal is for you to leave the meeting knowing more about Berkshire than when you came in, for you have to get good time while in Omaha. Also, we expect at least 54 questions, which will allow for 6 from each analyst and journalist, and for 18 from the audience. The questions from the audience will be chosen by means of 11 drawings that will take place at 8:15 a.m. on the morning of the annual meeting. Each of the 11 microphones installed in the arena and main overflow will host, so to speak, a drawing while I'm on the subject of owners, gaining knowledge and letting remind you that Charlie and I believe all shareholders should simultaneously have access to new information that Berkshire releases, and if possible, should also have adequate time to digest and analyze it before any trading takes place. That's why we try to issue financial data late on Fridays, on early Saturdays, on why our annual meeting is always held on Saturday, and a day that also eases traffic and parking problems. We do not follow the common practice of talking one-on-one with large institutional investors or analysts, treating them instead as we do all other shareholders. There is no one more important to us than the shareholder of limited means who trusts us with a substantial portion of his or her savings as I run the company day to day. And as I write this letter, that is why shareholders whose image is on my mind. For good reasons, I regularly extol accomplishments of our operating managers. They are truly all-stars who run their business as if they were the only asset owned by their families. I also believe the mindset of our managers to be as shareholder-oriented as can be found in the universe of large publicly owned companies. Most of our managers have no financial need to work, and the joy of hitting business home runs means as much to them as their paycheck. Equally important, however, are men and women who work with me at our corporate office. This team efficiently deals with a multitude of SEC and other regulatory requirements, files a 30,450 page federal income tax return, oversees the filing of 3,580 state tax returns, responds to countless shareholders and media inquiries, gets out the annual report, prepares for the country's largest annual meeting, coordinates the board activities, fact-checks this letter, and the list goes on and on. They handle all of these business tasks cheerfully and with unbelievable efficiency, making my life easy and pleasant. Their efforts go beyond activities strictly related to Berkshire. Last year, for example, they dealt with 40 universities, select from 200 applicants who sent students to Omaha for a Q&A day with me. They also handle all kinds of requests that I receive, arrange my travel, and even get my hamburgers and french fries, smothered in ketchup, of course, for lunch. In addition, they cheerfully pitched to help Kirisova, our talented ringmaster, annual meeting, deliver an interesting and entertaining weekend for our shareholders. They are proud to work for Berkshire, and I am proud of them. I'm a lucky guy, very fortunate in being surrounded by this excellent staff, a team of highly talented operating managers, and a boardroom of very wise and experienced directors. Come to Omaha in the cradle of capitalism on May 6th and meet the Berkshire Bunch. All of us look forward to seeing you. February 25, 2017, Warren E. Buffett, Chairman of the Board. Supplements. 1951, the security I like best, Geico. Referred to in the 2005 letter shareholder group written from the Commercial and Financial Chronicle, Thursday, December 6, 1951. The security I like best, Warren E. Buffett, Falk and Company, Omaha, Nebraska Government Employees Insurance Company, full employment. But one-time profits and record dividend payments do not set the stage for depressed security prices. Most industries have been riding this wave of prosperity during the past 5 years with few ripples to disturb the tide. The auto insurance business has not shared in the boom after the staggering losses of the immediate post-war period. The situation began to right itself in 1949 and 1950. Stock casualty companies again took it on the chin with underwriting experience and the second worst in 15 years. The recent earnings report of casualty companies, particularly those with bulk of writings and auto lines, have diverted bull market enthusiasm from their stocks on the basis of normal earning power and asset factors. Many of these stocks appear undervalued. The nature of the industry such as is cyclical bumps. Auto insurance is regarded as a necessity by majority of purchasers. Contracts must be renewed yearly after at rates based upon experience. The lag of rates behind costs, although detrimental in a period of rising prices, has characterized 1945 to 1951 period, should prove beneficial if deflationary forces should be set in action. Other industry advantages include lack of inventory, collection, labor and raw material problems, the hazard of product obsolescence, and related equipment obsolescence is also absent. Government Employees Insurance Corporation was organized in the mid-30s to provide complete auto insurance on a nationwide basis to an eligible class including 1. Federal, state, and municipal government employees, 2. Active and reserve commissioned officers, and then first 3 pay grades of non-commissioned officers to armed forces, 3 veterans who were eligible but on active duty, 4 former policyholders, 5 faculty members of universities, colleges, and schools, 6 government contractor employees engaged in defense work exclusively, and 7 stockholders. As the company has no agents or branch offices, as a result, policyholders receive standards auto insurance policies, a premium discount running as high as 30% off manual rates. Claims are handles promptly through approximately 500 representatives throughout the country. The term growth company has been applied with demand during the past few years. Companies whose sales increase represent a little more than inflation. Of price and general easing business competition, Geico qualifies as a legitimate growth company based upon the following record. Year, 1936-1940, premiums written, 100,036. Without 103,696.31, 768,057.68, policyholders 30,754, 25,514, 1945, 1,638,562.9, 51,697, 1950, 8,016,975.79, 143,944. Of course, the investor of today does not profit from yesterday's growth. In Geico's case, there is reason to believe the major portion of growth lies ahead. Prior to 1950, the company was only licensed in 15 of 50 jurisdictions, including DC and Hawaii. At the beginning of the year, there were less than 3,000 policyholders in New York State, yet 25% saved on insurance bill of $125 in New York should look bigger to the prospect than the 25% saved on the $50 rate in more sparsely settled regions. As cost competition increases in importance during time of recession, Geico's rate attraction should become even more effective in diverting business from the brother-in-law. With insurance rates moving higher due to inflation, the 25% spread in rates becomes wider in terms of dollars and cents. There is no pressure from agents to accept questionable applicants or renew poor risks. In states where the rate structure is inadequate, new promotion may be halted. Probably the biggest attraction of Geico is the profit margin advantage it enjoys. The ratio of underwriting profit to premiums earned in 1949 was 27.5% for Geico as compared to 6.7% for the 135 stock casualty and surety companies summarized by Best. His experience turned for the worse in 1950. Best Aggregate's profit margin dropped 3.0 and Geico's dropped to 18.0%. Geico does not write all casualty lines, however, bodily injury and property damage, both important lines for Geico, were among the least profitable lines. Geico also does a large amount of collision writing, which was a profitable line in 1950. During the first half of 1951, practically all insurers operated in the red on casualty lines with bodily injury and property damage among the most unprofitable, whereas Geico's profit margin was cut to slightly above 9%. Massachusetts Bonding and Insurance showed a 16% loss, New Amsterdam Casualty and 8% loss, Standard Accident Insurance a 9% loss, etc. Because of the rapid growth of Geico, cash dividends have had to remain low. Stock dividends in the 25-for-1 split increased the outstanding shares of 30,000 on June 1, 1948 to 250,000 on November 10, 1951. Valuable rights to subscribe to stock or affiliated companies have also been issued. Benjamin Graham has been chairman of the board since his investment trust acquired and distributed a large block of the stock in 1948. Leo Goodwin, who has guided Geico's growth since inception as the able president at the end of 1950, the 10 members of the board of directors own approximately one-third of the outstanding stock. Earnings in 10 equals 950 amounted to 3.92 as a contrasted $4.71 on the smaller amount of business in 1949. These figures include no allowance for the increase in the unearned premium reserve, which was substantial in both years. Earnings in 1951 will be lower than 1950, reflecting the growth of the company's assets. At a present price of about 8 times the earnings of 1950, a poor year for the industry, it appears that no price is being paid for the tremendous growth potential of the company. This is part of a continuous form appearing in the Chronicle, in which a week a different group of experts in the investment advisory field from all sections of the country participate and give their reasons for favoring a particular security. 1953, the security I like best, Western Insurance. The security I like best. A continuous forum in which each week a different group of experts in the investment advisory field from all sections of the country participate and give their reasons for favoring a particular security. March 1953, Warren E. Buffett, Buffett Falcon Company, Omaha, Nebraska. Western Insurance Securities, common stock. Again, my favorite security is the equity stock of a young, rapidly growing, and ably managed insurance company. Although government employees insurance company, my selection of 15 months ago, has had a price rise of more than 100%, it still appears very attractive as a vehicle for long-term capital growth. Literally, as an investor offered the opportunity to participate in the growth of two excellently managed and expanding insurance companies on the grossly undervalued basis, which appears possible in the case of Western Insurance Security Company. The two operating subsidiaries, Western Casualty and Surety and Western Fire, wrote a premium volume of $26,009,929 in 1952, on consolidated admitted assets of $29,590. Of $29,590,142, now licensed in 38 states. Their impressive growth record, both absolutely and relative to the industry, is summarized in Table 1 below. Western Insurance Securities owns 92% of Western Casualty and Surety, which in turn owns 99.95% of Western Fire Insurance. Other assets of Western Insurance Securities are minor, consisting of approximately 180,000 net quick assets. The capitalization consists of 7,000 shares of 100% par 6% preferred callable at $125, 35,000 shares of Class A preferred callable at $60, which is entitled to a $2.50 regular dividend. Participate further up to a maximum total of $4 per share, and 50,000 shares of common stock. The arrears are on the Class A presently amount to $36.75. The management, headed by Ray Dubach as of the highest grade, but Mr. Dubach has aptly steered the company since its inception in 1924 and has had a reputation in the insurance industry of being a man of outstanding integrity and ability. The second tier of executive is also top caliber. During the formative years of the company, senior charges were out of line with the earning power of the enterprise. The reader can clearly perceive why the same senior charges that caused such great difficulty with premium volume range about the $3 million mark. We caused little trouble upon detaining a premium volume in excess of $26 million. Adjusting for only 25% of the increase in the unearned premiums reserve, earnings of the $1,367,063 in 1952 are very depressed for auto insurance were sufficient to cover total senior charges of $129,500, more than 10 times over, leaving earnings of $24.74 on each share of common stock. It is quite evident that common stock has finally arrived, although investors do not appear to realize it since the stock is quoted less than twice earnings at a discount of approximately 55% from the December 31, 1952 book value of 86.26 per share. Table 2 indicates a post-war record of earnings and dramatically illustrates the benefits being realized by the common stock because the expanded earnings base. The book value is calculated with allowance for 25% equity in the unearned premium reserve and is after allowance for call price plus arrears on the preferred. Since Western has achieved such an excellent record increasing its industry share of premium volume, the reader may well wonder whether standards have been compromised. This is definitely not the case. During the past 10 years, Western's operating ratios have proved quite superior to the average multiple line company. The combined loss and expense ratio for the two Western companies is reported by Alfred M. Best Company on a case basis are compared in Table 3 with similar ratio for all stock-fired casualty companies. The careful reader will not overlook the possibility that Western's superior performance has been due to concentration of writings in unusually profitable lines. Actually, the reverse is true. Although represented in all major lines, Western is still primarily an automobile insurer with 60% of its volume derived from auto lines, since automobile underwriting has proven generally unsatisfactory in the post-war period, and particularly so in the last 3 years. Western's experience was even far more favorable relative to the industry than the tabular comparison would indicate. Western has always maintained ample loss reserves and settled claims. Underwriting results over the post-war period have shown Western to be assured at the end of each year. Triennial examinations conducted by the insurance commissioners have confirmed these findings. Turning to their investment picture, we of course find the growth in invested assets and investment income paralleling the growth in premium volume, consolidating that the assets have risen from $5,154,367 in 1940 to their present level of $29,590,142. Western follows an extremely conservative investment policy, relying upon growth in premium volume for expansion and investment income. Of the year-end portfolio of $21,889,243 governments plus a list of well-diversified high-quality municipals total $20,141,246. Or 92% in stocks, only $1,747,997 or 8% net investment income of $474,472 in 1952 was equal to $6.14 per share of Western Insurance common after minority interest and assuming senior charges were covered entirely for investment income. The casualty insurance industry during the past several years have suffered staggering losses on automobile insurance lines. This trend was sharply reversed during the late 1952. Substantial rate increase in 1951-1952 are being brought to bear on underwriting results with increasing force as policies are renewed at much higher premiums. Earnings within the casualty industry are expected to be on a very satisfactory basis in 1953 and 1954. Western, while operating very profitably during the entire period, may be expected to report increased earnings as a result of expanding premium volume, increased assets, and the higher rate structure. Unearned premium volume $30 million may be conservatively expected. 1954 normal earning power on this volume should average about $30 per share, with investment income contributing approximately $8.40 per share after deducting all senior charges from investment income. The patient investor in Western Insurance Common can be reasonably assured of a tangible acknowledgement of his enormously strengthened equity position. It is well to bear in mind that the operating companies have expanded premium volume some 550% in the last 12 years. This has required an increased surplus of 350% and consequently restricted the payment of dividends. Recent dividend increase by Western Casualty should pave the way for a more prompt payment on arrearages. Any leveling of premium volume will permit more liberal dividends, while a continuation of the past rate of increase, which in my opinion is very unlikely, would of course make for much greater earnings. Operating a stable industry with an excellent record of profitability, I believe Western Insurance Common to be an outstanding vehicle for substantial capital appreciation at its present price of about $40. The stock is traded over the counter. 1967, National Indemnity purchase, referred to in the 2014 letter to shareholder, Berkshire Hathaway, Incorporated, P.O. Box C904, New Bedford, Massachusetts 02741, February 22, 1967. Jack D. Ringwald, Omaha, Nebraska. Dear Sir, you have made available to Warren E. Buffett balance sheets of National Indemnity Company and National Fire and Marine Insurance Company dated December 31, 1966 and January 31, 1967, respectively, together with an income account for National Indemnity Company for the year ended December 31, 1966. You have further stated that, in your opinion, these financial statements fairly represent the condition of the companies as of respective dates and the results of National Indemnity Company's operation for the year ended December 31, 1966, and that no major adverse factors not common to the industry are known to you at this time. Based upon these representations, Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated will be shares of the National Indemnity Company and National Fire and Marine Insurance Company, and you will sell all shares of these companies you own on control on the following conditions. On or before Thursday, February 23, 1967, the sum of $8,433,850 in the form of cash or United States Treasury bills will be deposited by the Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated with the United States National Bank of Omaha, Nebraska, under the terms of an escrow agreement, copy of which is annexed here to Exhibit 1. Thereafter, on February 23, 1967, a tender offer will be mailed to our shareholders of National Indemnity Company and National Fire and Marine Insurance Company in the forms annexed to said escrow agreement as Exhibits A and B, and representation, terms, and conditions of said tender offers are by this reference made a part of this letter. You will accept these offers, which acceptance will cover 83,506 shares of National Indemnity Company and 4,651 shares of National Fire and Marine Insurance Company. 3. Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated will purchase their shares and all other tendered in accordance with the terms and conditions of said tender offers, provided not less than 80% of the issued and outstanding shares of both companies are tendered for the purchase. The present agency of National Indemnity Company, National Fire and Marine Insurance Company, including those controlled by you, will continue in their present status as long as they continue to be profitable to the insurance companies. You will agree to continue associating with the companies as long as mutually acceptable terms of employment can be made. Yours very truly, Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, Warren E. Buffett, accepted February 22, 1967. 1975, pensions. Referred to in the 2013 letter to shareholders. Pensions, there are two aspects of business pension cost, problem upon which management can have a significant impact. 1, maintaining rational control over pension plan promised to employees, and 2, increasing investment returns on pension plan assets, the reversible nature of pension promises. 2, control promised rationally. It is necessary to understand the basic arithmetic and practical rules governing pension plans. The first thing to recognize with every pension benefit decision is that you almost certainly are playing for keeps and won't be able to reverse your decision subsequently if it produces abnormal profitability. As a practical matter, it is next to impossible to decrease pension benefits in a large profitable company or even a large marginal on. The plan may embody language unequivocal declaring the company's right to terminate at any time and providing that contributions shall be solely at the option of the company, but the law has eroded much of significance. Such out clauses were presumed to have, and operating practicalities render any residual rights to terminate moot. So rule number 1 regarding pension costs has to be known before what you are getting into before signing up. Look before you leap. There probably is more managerial ignorance in pension costs than any other cost item of remotely similar magnitude, and as will become so expensively clear to citizens in future decades, there have been even greater electorate ignorance of governmental pension costs. Actuarial thinking simply is not intuitive in most minds. The lexicon is arcane. The numbers seem unreal, and making promise never quite triggers the visceral response evoked by writing a check. In no other managerial area can such a huge aggregate liabilities, which will be reflected in progressively increasing annual costs and cash requirements, recreated so quickly and with so little immediate financial pain, like brisk room labor practices. Small errors will compound. Care and caution are in order. Acceptive arithmetic of promise. Now pay later. If you promise to pay me $500 per month for a little life, if you have just expended actuarially, but nevertheless in total tangible sense, about $65,000. If you're financially good for such a lifetime promise, you would be better off. If I have an average expectancy regarding longevity for one my age, handling me a check for $50,000, but it wouldn't feel the same. And if you promise to pay me 1,000 hamburgers a month for life, which superficially may sound equivalent to the previous proposition, assuming a present hamburger price of 50 cents, you have created an obligation which in an inflationary world becomes the most difficulty to evaluate. This creates a risk we talk of later as the earthquake risk. One thing is certain, you won't find an insurance company willing to take the 1,000 hamburgers a month obligation off your hands for $65,000 or even $130,000. While hamburgers equate to 50 cents, now the promise to pay hamburgers in the future does not equate to the promise to pay 50 cents pieces in future. So before the plans are introduced or amended, some financial consequence, particularly in a world of significant inflation, which I believe to be close to a certainty, should be clearly understood by you. Consulting actuaries are very good at making calculations. They are frequently terrible at making the assumptions upon which the calculations are based. In fact, they may be particularly ill-equipped to make the most important assumptions if the world is one of the economic continuing. They are The trained to be conventional, their self-interest in obtaining and retaining business would be ill-served if they were to become more than mildly unconventional, and being conventional under crucial assumptions basically means accepting historical experiences adjusted by a moderate nudge from current events. This works fine in forecasting such factors as mortality, morbidity, works reasonably well on items such as employee turnover, and can be a disaster in estimating the two most important elements of a pension cost equation, which are fund earnings and salary escalation. My views regarding the inflationary possibilities are more extreme than those of the most respected observers. It is difficult to substantiate a dogmatic view, since conclusions rest more upon social and political judgments than upon economic training and analysis. You should recognize the subjective nature of the reasoning leading to my pessimistic conclusions regarding inflation over the longer term, and not be reluctant to correct accordingly. Illustrated elemental actuarial principles. To illustrate a few actuarial principles worth understanding but without employing the technical jargon and the asterisk, let's use the example of your household. Assume that you personally make irrevocable promises to pay pensions of $300 per month for life after they reach 65 to save for household employees. To make it easy, let's say they reach 55 years of age at present. If you make that promise today, you have reduced your net worth today by about $70,000. For simplicity's sake, I am ignoring some variables such as sex of employees, women live longer and therefore cost more death before 65, etc., and calculating such factors that actuaries shine. Why are you immediately $70,000 poor? Well, if you set aside a $70,000 fund now and invest at 7% interest and let all such interest remain in the fund to be compounded, the principal value of the fund will grow to about $140 in 10 years. $1,000 in under 10 years. When your employees reach 65 and to buy the lifetime annuity, $3,600 per year will then cost about $35,000 each. And you'll tell us into accumulated capital of the fund. So if you make the promise and this binding legal and morally figure, if you have spent today $70,000, even though you don't have to pay out a dime of cash for 10 years. Now, it takes one step further and assume that your employees each are earning $600 per month, but instead of promising them $300 per month, upon retirement, you promise them 50% of their salary at the time they retire. If their increase runs 7.2% per year, and they probably will still in the world, I foresee they will be earning $1,200 per month. By the time they reach 65, it will now cost you $70,000 each to purchase annuities for them to fulfill their promise. The actual cost today of modifying your promises from 50% of present pay to 50% of terminal pay was exactly double the fund that needed to be set aside now, from $70,000 to $140,000. Many pension plans use final average pay, usually the average of the last 5 years or the highest consecutive 5 years in the last 10 years employed, and some use career average pay. I am not arguing here which should be used, but I'm illustrating a dramatic difference in cost then can occur because of rather minor appearing changes in wording. Pension costs in labor-intensive business clearly can be a major of size and an important variable in the cost picture, particularly in a world characterized by high rates of inflation. I emphasize the latter factor to the point of redundancy because most managers I know and virtually all elected officials in the case of governmental plans simply never fully grasp the magnitude of liabilities they're incurring by relatively painless current promises. In many cases in the public area, the bill in large part will be handed to the next generation to be paid by increased taxes or by accelerating use of the printing press. But in corporation, the bill will have to be paid out of the current future revenues with interest, and frequently with what is in effect a cost of living escalator, the earthquake risk. In Germany, in the great inflation of the early 1920s, the entire Daimler, Benz, Mercedes automobile company was selling at the market for the price of 300 motor cars. Almost all past investment were nearly worthless, and current salary and levels were astronomical in relation to past history. Under such conditions, or conditions far short of such an extreme, the burden of any pension benefits owned by business were charged based on current salary levels, though related to much earlier service employment, must be backed almost exclusively by current value. Earning power of the business advanced funding simply evaporates. For example, assume that salaries and the cost of living are moving upward at 25% per year, and the pension fund is earning 10% per year. A set of assumptions not ridiculously different from what exists in England at the moment. Under such conditions, fund put aside for retirement immediately begin to shrink. In relation to promised benefits, every month of fewer hamburgers can be purchased from the funds contributed to the pension plan, even after accumulating dividends and interest on the funds. Almost no one chooses to think about this sort of earthquake risk in dealing with pension plans any more than people choose to spend much time thinking about nuclear war. It may be my earlier mentioned bias or my mathematical bent, but I believe some unthinkable inflation-related calculation should be made and even considered before any company assumes open-ended pensions obligations guaranteeing a large number of persons absolute protection against inflation by gearing benefits without limit to final pay or escalating benefits of persons already retired based on changes in the cost of living. Thus, the really devastating possibility regarding regarding private pension plans is sustained a double-digit inflation when salaries move ahead at a substantially higher rate than investment returns, and benefits are tied to final salaries or even more expensively cost of living increases after retirement as in recent rubber and aluminum contracts. It is virtually impossible to refund obligations. Like it or not, you become much like the Social Security Fund absent the power of tax. Should that occur, future purchasers of the product of the company must be willing to do so at prices that reflects not only wage of current workers but the promise of past workers. Some business will have economic characteristics allowing them to pass along these costs, but others will have major trouble. So on balance, I believe we are in a relatively favorable business under such circumstances. I do not believe this problem can be solved by the investment process. I mention it for completeness, not because I have answers, and to urge caution making pension benefit promises subject to dramatic escalation through substantial attrition in the purchasing power of money. Now let's take a look at funding and investment behavior appropriate to an economic world, at least reasonably similar to the past, recognizing that such a world is far from certainty. The investment management problem inherent in all pension plans. Once having committed to provide pensions, how do we pay? The law and prudent business practice mandate that we start putting aside funds on a fairly orderly and consistent basis from which we can fulfill our promises in this manner. We pay the employee currently while he is being productive for the company and will simultaneously set up a savings account collectively, not individually, which will accumulate interest. So, as a purchase an annuity, not actually purchased in most plans, of course, just served by the pension fund. Fob him at retirement, which will discharge or promise to pay him throughout his non-productive years. Thus, our current costs and current cash requirements of our estimates are accurate as to what we will earn on the savings account, as well as other estimates regarding turnover, salary, escalation, longevity, etc. will reflect his total lifetime employment cost to us spread rather evenly over his productive years. This advanced funding treatment, matching full current cost against current production in contrast with Social Security Plan program, which essentially taxes current producers to pay current non-producers. This simply means moving a portion of current national output of goods and services over from those who produce to those who are non-producing and to whom promises have been made. If such a system had been in effect for a very long time, the demographic profile remained fairly constant. The promise remained fairly constant and there was no inflation. The net effect from such a pay-as-you-go approach would not substantially differ from an advanced funding basis. However, these conditions do not exist, which may make for various problems, including some that exacerbate inflation and thus have negative fallout for the economics of private plans. Because a business corporation, unlike the federal government, has to create a savings account, an investment accumulating investment management operation of some sort to properly fund its pension plans, it must make investment management decisions with respect to pension plan assets. The History of Corporate Pension Plans Management Act 1, The Awakening. A few decades ago, pensions were a relatively new thing at most companies, so that the savings account were in their formative stages and therefore much smaller. Furthermore, promises were fractions of those presently made, so that the amount eventually required in the savings account to purchase the required annuity retirement was correspondingly smaller. Thus, the amounts paid into pension funds savings account were largely forgotten so far as managerial responsibility was concerned until the Great Awakening of the 1960s. At that time, management noticed that the funds had grown to the point where they sometimes were 25% to 50% of the net worth of the company, often making the assets employed in the savings account larger than those employed in the company's largest division. Here are a few figures which I have handy from year-end 1972. In millions. Company, A&P, DuPont, Firestone, IBM, U.S. Steel. Worth. Corporate net worth, $599, $3,268, $1,251, $7,555, $3,577. Pension fund assets, $236, $1,817, $423, $1,023, $2,239. So all U.S. Steel had a visible $3.6 billion in operating assets, which management probably spent 99% plus of their business hours thinking about. They had $2.2 billion in the bank, whose economic results would impact future values for the shareholders, dollar for dollar with the economic results of the Steel assets. There literally were years when the savings account earned more than was earned out of all operating assets of the Steel business. In fairness to U.S. Steel, it should be mentioned that they were one of the pioneers in recognizing the importance of pension assets and have done a better than average job through in-house management. The returns actually realized in the savings account had enormous impact on cost. A sustained 1% change in earning rate could easily swing the annual cost of the contributing company by 15%. 3. During a period when equities had produced fabulous returns, many of the plans had been invested largely in bonds, which not only bore low fixed rates of 3% to 5% in the earlier periods, but also had suffered significant shrinkages in market values as interest rates increased secularly. If interest rates go up, bond prices must go down. If the bonds are long-term and the rates are raised sharply, prices go into power dive. Many management saw this largest division earning dismal rates of return with substantial market value shrinkage in the bond component, while all around them high returns were being realized from a stock with little apparent effort or talent. If a company had $100 million invested in its engine division, earning 12% by managerial zeal and ingenuity, why tolerate $100 million in its pension fund division poking along at only 4%? Because of an intention, particularly when increasing the $4 million, the some larger figure would have the same impact in the future earnings for owners as raising margins on engines. Intensive effort on production, research, and sales might only produce an increase from 12% to 13% in the engine area, since decisions already have been so near to optimal. But it was easy to imagine 4% becoming 10% in the pension fund area if just average results were attained in equity investment, and of course, who would tell for being just average? The History of Corporate Pension Plan Management Act 2, The Great Leap. And so the hunt was on. Wall Street abhors a commercial vacuum if the will to believe stirs within the customer. The merchandise will be supplied without warranty. When franchise companies are warned by investors, franchise companies will be found and recommended by the underwriters. If there are none to be found, they will be created. Similarly, if above average investment performance is sought, it will be promised in abundance, and at least the illusion will be produced. Initially, those who know better will resist promising the impossible. As the clientele first begins to drain away, advisors will argue the unsoundness of the new trend and the strengthness of the old methods. But when the trickle gives signs of turning into flood business, Darwinism will prevail, and most organizations will adapt. This is what happens in the money management field. The bank had traditionally been the major money managers, leaving aside insured plans, and by and large investing as well as their communication had been lackluster. They felt obliged to seek improvement, or at least the appearance of improvement, as corporate managers searched for yardsticks by which to make their decisions as to whom care of this newly discovered giant division be granted. The corporate managers naturally looked for groups with impressive organizational charts, lots of young talent, hungry but appropriately conscious of responsibility, heavy on MBAs from good schools, a capacity for speed in decision-making and action, and short organization that looked something like they perceived themselves, and they looked for a record of recent performance. Unfortunately, they found both. A little thought, of course, would convince anyone that the composite area of professionally managed money can perform above average. It simply is too large a portion of the entire investment universe. Estimates are that now about 70% of stock market trading is accounted for by professionally managed money. Any thought that 70% of the environment is going to substantially outperform the total environment is analogous to the fellow sitting down with his friends at a poker table and announcing, "Well, fellows, if we all play carefully tonight, we all should be able to win a little." An interesting example of this line of thinking subspecies wishful occurs in the April 1975 Conference Board Trends in Pension Fund Administration article, which Marty sent me the other day in a carefully written investment guidelines statement by a manufacturing company. It is announced, "We believe it is reasonable to expect long-term results superior to the usual market indexes, and the S&P 500 in particular. Specifically, will look the performance better than this index in all types of market environments. And yes, Virginia, maybe every football team can have a winning season this year." So clearly, the almost universal expectation of above-average performance in pension fund management were doomed to disappointment. These disappointments are certain to be amplified by the corollary affliction that frequently accompanies pressure for investments performance. Higher turnover rates. It is difficult to measure turnover costs with precision, but they certainly must run at least 2% on average when applied to the round trip on purchase and sale. If an investment manager is striving for not only acceptable quarterly performance but also for the appearance of behaving as other highly thought of managers are known to be behaving most aggressively to keep his portfolio in the right stocks, he easily can average turnover rates of 25% per year. When the performance rate peaked, drastically higher turnovers figures were recorded with some managers. In short term, it frequently is better to look smart than to be smart, particularly if your employment is to be decided by a rather brief interview. If the fans are going to decide your hiring status based only on a few swings, it is prudent to develop batting style that will remind them of Joe DiMaggio or Ted Williams. Even if long-range, your percentage of solid hits with that style is small, and you will obtain better results batting cross-handed. In any event, a 25% turnover rate among professionals is a group with 2% cost attached to such turnover reduces group performance by 1.5 of 1% per annum, $1 billion per year on $300 billion of assets. This means that instead of chance dispersal results causing half of all managers to fall above the unmanaged performance level, which has no transaction cost, and half to be below, the frictional drag of turnover cost causes well over half to perform worse than what average might be assumed to be. For the reasons set forth above, almost all recent investment management performance by pension fund of large corporations has been fair to poor, specifically the Becker study, most comprehensive of all pension investment measuring services, report the following. Overall return, S&P 500, Becker median result, last three market cycles, 530.52 to 1231.74. 5.3%, 4.1%. Last two market cycles, 9:30.55 to 12:31.74, 2.1%, 0.4%. Last single market cycle, 5:30.70 to 12:31.74, 2.2%, 0.3%. Excludes broad segment of portfolios and the equity management only is measured against the equity yardstick. Is there hope? Can Wise Corporation ensure superior investment performance for its pension plan? If above average performance to be the yardstick, the vast majority of investment managers must fail. Well, if you succeed due either chance or skill, of course, for some intermediate period of years, are bound to look better than average due to chance, just as he would be the case if 1,000 coin managers engaged in coin flipping contests, there would be some winners over a 5 or 10 flip measurement cycle. After 5 flips, you would expect to have 31 with uniformly successful records who, with their oracular abilities, confirm that the crucible of the marketplace would author pedantic essays on subjects such as pensions. In addition to one benefiting from short-term luck, I believe it is possible that a few will succeed in a modest way because of the skill. I do not believe they can be identified solely by a study of their past record. They may be operating with a coin that they know favors heads and be calling heads each time, but their bare statistical record will not be distinguishable from the larger group who have been calling flips indiscriminately and have been lucky so far. It may be possible, if you know a good deal about investment as well as human personality, to talk with the manager who has a decent record and find that he is using methods which really gives an advantage over other investors and which appear to be likely to provide continued superiority in the future. This requires a very wise and informed client, and even then is not free from pitfalls. For openers, there is one huge obvious pitfall. I'm virtually certain that the above average performance cannot be maintained with large sums of managed money. It is nice to think that $20 billion managed under one roof will produce financial resources which can hire some of the world's most effective investment talent. After all, doesn't that big money Las Vegas attract the most effective entertainers to its stages? Surely $50 million annually fees on $20 billion of managed assets will allow A, an array of industry specialists covering minute-by-minute developments, afflicting companies within their purview, B, top-flight economists to study the movement of the tides, and C, nimble, decisive portfolio managers to translate this wealth of information to appropriate market action. It just doesn't work that way. Down the street, there's another $20 billion getting the same input. Each such organization has its own group of bridge experts cooperating on identical hands, and they all have read the same book and consulted the same computers. Furthermore, you just don't move $20 billion or any significant fraction around easily or inexpensively, particularly not when all eyes tend to be focused on the same current investment problems and opportunities. An increase in fund managed dramatically reduces the number of investment opportunities, since only companies of very large size can be in any of real use in funding portfolios. More money means fewer choices and restriction of those choices to exact the same bill of fare offered to those others for ravenous financial appetites. In short, the rational expectation of assuring above average pension fund management is very close to nil. Illustrations of reality in pension fund investment management. I recently received some interesting figures from a pension fund involving about $250 million of assets. The 9.5-year records through June 30, 1975 of the 3 major banks involved managing $20 to $50 million per bank follows compared to average as defined in 2 ways: the S&P 500, DAJ Industrials. Annual compounded rate of return including dividends. Dow Jones Industrials plus 2.8%, S&P 500 3.8%, Continental Illinois 1.8%, First National City plus 1.0%, Morgan Guarantee plus 30.4%. Until recently, Chase had managed a comparable segments of the funds, but was terminated because of poor performance, probably worse than other banks shown above. Each percentage point plus or minus affected this fund by about $2 to $4 million over the time period measured. A further interesting calculation was made. On June 30th, the portfolio held by Continental, 64% of securities held measured by market value also were in Morgan portfolio, and 44% were duplicated in the First National City portfolio. Similar overlap was demonstrated in other ways. I am familiar enough with the record of this fund to state that no unusual constraints have been placed on the managers and no special factors have to be recognized to interpret the numbers. I believe that Morgan's above average record here compared to that of the other large banks is typical of its relative performance and other pension funds. I also feel the predictive value of the relative standing to be low. Pensions and Investment magazine recently rated the 35 largest bank, for which 5-year performance records of commingled equity funds were available. 10 did as well as better than the S&P, consistent with what might be expected according to the probability theory. If everyone were operating solely according to the chance, there was a modest drag on performance caused by transaction costs. More importantly, I know of no set of statistics which would demonstrate any opposite view of relative managers handling large amounts of money. The evidence all seems to confirm that it isn't wise to expect above average investment results from a corporate pension plan conventionally managed. Major options in pension fund management. With respect to pension fund investment in securities, several paths can be followed, singly or in combination. One or more large conventional money managers may be retained with the expectation that performance will be slightly poorer than average because of costs involved. If the manager is very large and conventional, any major bank will do. Directors of the corporation should run no risk of imprudent behavior as fiduciaries under the new ERISA statute. Conventional behavior is safe even when the potential litigants have the benefit of hindsight. If we should go this route, I see no reason to change from Morgan. 2. Management and security selection can be in essence abandoned by simply creating a portfolio which is equivalent to average. This minimizes turnover in management costs and probably accomplishes about the same result as one, perhaps with just a touch of more potential liability for results, since tacit admission has been made that no effort is being expended to manage. Several funds have been established fairly recently to duplicate the average, quite explicitly embodying the principle that no management is cheaper and slightly better than the average paid management after transaction costs. This policy could be implemented by participating in such funds or undo it yourself basis. A manager can be found handling smaller amounts of whose record has been good for the right reasons, then hope that no one else finds him. Good records of any type of usually have attracted massive money flows, whether the record was based on unusual skill, luck, or even occasional semi-fraudulent activity which was a manufactured record. Even those records which I believe to have been based at least partially on skill have wilted when subjected to torrents of money. A further problem is that in no case were the superior records have observed based upon institutional skills which could be maintained despite the change in phases. Rather, the good results have been accomplished by a single individual or at most a few working in fairly specialized areas in which the great bulk of investment money simply had no interest. It has been very difficult to outthink the pack on General Motors, IBM, Sears, etc. rather than unusual records, and there have been few that have been maintained to have been achieved by those who have worked relatively neglected fields in which competition was light. Your win-loss percentage in tennis will not determine the absolute level of ability that you possess. Rather, it will be determined by your ability to select inferior opponents. If you select with care, it will be quite easy to attain a winning percentage higher than, say, Cliff Richie while he is playing on the tour. Application of this principle is a key element in bridge, poker, investments. Harder to apply in the latter, however, it is easier to identify a couple of palookas at the bridge table. Many pension funds, including the fund to which I referred earlier, have attempted to find superior but relatively unknown managers still working with small sums. It has often involved dozens of interviews and usually comes down to the past record, particularly the recent past, plus an articulate practitioner who looks reasonable and respectable. In my opinion, based only on impressions, the overall record from the selection process has been poor and very likely worse than the mildly below average record, the major money manager. The reason isn't too hard to see, particularly with the rearview mirror, which of Wall Street is a succession of fashions. Obviously, some invisible have hit the most recent fashion, and the record will look correspondingly good, maybe sensationally good if they have a reckless streak and have played a particular trend very hard. But fashion hitting never has been successfully maintained to my knowledge, and the manager primarily selected for recent hot performance knows what he is expected to do. He has to perform too quickly, so the new small managers' decisions frequently are characterized by high turnover managers' mistakes, even more furious activity to catch up, etc. It has not happened every time, but my hunch is that the sum total performance of a relatively unknown go manager for pension funds has been worse than the lumbering, stiff-legged minuet performed by the major banks. A fixed income bonds investment strategy can be followed, which presently allows returns of about 9% per annum that can be locked in for some time. This option currently is becoming somewhat more popular, should be quite defensible under ERISA, and will look good or bad depending upon what returns from equity holdings develop over the next decade or two. This essentially is the same decision that was made by default several decades ago by many companies, except the rates they were then were 40% instead of 9%. I do not recommend an attempt to us to go back and forth from bonds to stocks. It is a skill possessed by few in any, and certainly not by group. If we could master this particular form of alchemy, there would be little reason to do anything else. The comfort level produced by this option is likely to be high under any conditions except high rates of inflation, which will produce distress under all of the options discussed herein. My final option, and the one to which I lean, although not anything like a 45-degree angle, is mildly unconventional, but thereby causing somewhat more legal risk for directors. It may differ from other common stock programs, where an attitude in appearance or even results, and it involves retreating portfolio management decisions, much like business acquisition decisions by corporate managers. I am leaving most of the legal discussion out of this memo, partly due to space consideration, and probably because it's not my field. In general, the safest course is to behave as the most others are behaving, and to trust in the expertise of large large, well-regarded conventional organizations. I also believe it is defensible, although not automatically defensible, to diversify among a group of well-financed entrenched business purchased at reasonable valuations of earnings and assets. The directors and officers of the company consider themselves to be quite capable of making business decisions, including decisions regarding the long-term attractiveness of specific business operations purchased at specific prices. We have made decisions to purchase several television businesses, a newspaper business, etc., and other relationships we have made such as judgments covering a much wider spectrum of the business operations. Negotiated prices of such purchase of an entire business often are dramatically higher than stock market valuations. Attributable to well-managed similar operations, longer-term rewards to owners in both cases will flow from such investment proportional to the economic results of the business. By buying small pieces of business through the stock market rather than entire business through negotiations, several disadvantages occur. A. The right to manage or take manage is forfeited. B. The right to determine the dividend policy or direct areas of internal reinvestment is absent. C. The ability to borrow long-term against a business asset versus against a stock position is greatly reduced. And D. The opportunity to sell the business on a full value private owner basis is forfeited. These are the important negative factors, but if a group investment carefully chosen at a bargain price, it can maximize the impact of a single bad experience in, say, the management area, which cannot be corrected, and occasionally there is an offsetting advantage which can be of very substantial value, but for which nothing should be paid at the time of purchase. That relates to the periodic tendency of stock markets to experience successes which can cause business when changing hands in small pieces through stock transactions to sell at prices significantly above privately determined negotiated values. At such times, holding may be liquidated at better prices than if the whole business were owned, and due to the impersonal nature of securities markets, no moral stigma need to be attached to dealing with such underwriting buyers. Stock market prices may bounce wildly and irrationally, but if decisions regarding internal rates of return of the business are reasonably correct and a small portion of the business is bought at a fraction of its private owner value, a good return for the fund should be assured over the time span against which pension fund results should be measured. It might be asked what the difference is between this approach and simply picking stocks a la Morgan, Shutter, Stevens, etc. is in a large part a matter of attitude, whereby the results of the business becomes a standard against which measurements are made rather than quarterly stock prices, and embodies a long time span of judgment confirmation, just does the investment by a corporation major new division plant or product. It treats stock ownership as business ownership with a corresponding adjustment to mental set, and it depends on excess of value over price paid, not merely favorable short-term earnings or stock market outlook. General stock market considerations simply don't enter into the purchase decision. Finally, it rests in a belief which both seems logical and which has been born out of historical and security markets, that intrinsic business values and the eventual prime determinant of the stock prices. In other words, my former boss, in the short run, the market is a voting machine, but in the long term, it is a weighing machine. Specifically, it's possible to invest $12 million in our pension fund in a dozen businesses, maybe more. ERISA emphasizes diversification, with current intrinsic value measured by private owner valuations and transactions attributable to our investment of, say, $20 million in current earnings of at least $1.5 million. The portion of such earnings paid out to us clearly is worth 100 cents on the dollar, and the reasonable batting average by the management of companies in which we invest should result in the portion reinvested having similar value. If this the case, such pension division operation will produce better returns than bond investment in current rates. The main long-term risk would be that future returns on capital obtained by our division managers would turn sour in some individual cases that undoubtedly would prove true. It might well be that there's also would be a favorable surprise or two. That is true of any acquisition program. The one substantial advantage that this division would have had would be attractive purchase prices far below those available for purchasers. An entire business of purchases could not be made on such bargain basis. We simply would wait until they could. A second advantage would be the flexibility provided by a public stock market, allowing portions of business operations to be acquired or divested much more easily than an operating business. It must be emphasized the measurement of the program would have to be based on the progress in our share of earnings and the assets of the constituent companies, not short-term market movements. We would expect substantial increases in earnings, dividends, and asset values over, say, a decade, just as we expect with our operating divisions. At Washington Post, we would, in mental approach, have created a new diversified division, currently capitalized at about $12 million, which is expected to earn a better than bond rate, with which to eventually pay its employees. In a sense, this is what was done in the profit-sharing fund when it accumulated Washington Post's stock throughout earlier years. Basically, it was a decision because the business earned very well internally and thereby grew in value at a substantial rate. It was an attractive, partially owned business, acquired at an attractive price until market prices were introduced, which complicated things. The funds build-ups through the self-owning division were significantly larger than would have been achieved by buying bonds or the general run of common stocks. If it should be decided to implement such a policy, recommendation should be obtained from quantified analysts who clearly understand our rather unusual selection criteria. This could be handled on quite infrequent basis. As mentioned earlier, a policy could be followed combining more than one option. Most combinations have been 1 and 3 or 1 and 4, but 4 and 5 could be more logical. Pension asset management in the scale of business priorities. Of course, the desirability or even considering something non-conventional, not to be equated with more risk. The exclusive benefit provisions of ERISA requires fiduciaries to discharge their duty solely in the interest of the participants, and beneficiaries relate to the relative impact pension results can have on overall earnings. One of my friends always reminds me, if a thing's not worth doing at all, it's not worth doing well. If our pension assets were $1 million and likely to grow only a few $100,000 a year, it would be ridiculous to think any activity that might incur even unwarranted criticism, let alone litigation. On the other hand, if we had a U.S. Steel's pension situation, we might want to make a truly top priority project out of pension asset management as they have, even if we might slightly increase personal risk to directors by so doing well. We fall in between, although if you look through the plans to which contribute but don't manage, skilled mechanical, etc., we are moving more in the direction of U.S. Steel. It is likely that within 10 years we will have $40 million in our direct pension division and further substantial sums in other plans presently. On indirect basis, earnings on business purchase through this division should run at least $5 million per year. In prior years, it was felt that by limiting contributions to union plans so much per shift as per hour, management was relieved of the responsibility for any specific level of benefits, as well as pension fund administration. The shield of the hands-off position is eroding, and we should recognize that we may well have responsibility at some future date for benefits promised under the plans, which we originally thought involved only defined contributions. With this in prospect, we may wish to gain at least partial command over fund investment in this area. Summing up, if the economic world turns out to be one of sustained double-digit inflation, probably still unlikely, but not unthinkable, among the carnage will be private pension plans. The investment process can do little to modify that disaster. Hope lies mainly in the care with which past promises have been made in the ownership of business whose economic characteristics allow pass-through pricing, which includes a large part of past labor costs as well as a full current cost. 2. In a more orderly world, the care with which promises have been worded remains important, but on a scale that diminishes inflation moderates. Conventional approaches to money management should not be expected to produce above average results, but average will be perfectly acceptable with low inflation rates. 3. A mildly non-conventional investment approach, emphasizing a business approach to security selection, gives some opportunity for long-term results slightly above average without corresponding increasing investment risks. Warren E. Buffett, October 14, 1975. 1978, Diversified Retailing Merger. Letter of November 27, 1978, which accompanied the prospectus related to the 1978 merger of Diversified Retailing Company into Berkshire. Warren E. Buffett, 1440 Kiewit Plaza, Omaha, Nebraska, 68131, November 27, 1978. The stockholders of Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated and Diversified Retailing Company Incorporated. This formidable document describes the business activities of Diversified Berkshire, as well as the reasons why Berkshire and as well as the reasons why the boards of directors of those companies favor the merger of Diversified into Berkshire. I urge you to read this material carefully. If not, it not only will aid you in voting intelligently in the merger, but probably will enhance your understanding of your investment in Berkshire and are Diversified. Berkshire shareholders will find that the size of a proposed merger is not proportional to the size of this document. Because Diversified owns a large interest in Berkshire, there will be an effective net increase of no more than 56,500 in the outstanding shares of Berkshire should the merger be approved, an increase of less than 6% from the amount presently outstanding. Berkshire will acquire several important assets, the most significant being 841,900 shares of blue chip stamps. The 16% interest added to Berkshire's present holdings will give Berkshire majority ownership of this large profitable company. However, should the merger be approved, Berkshire will assume about $15 million Diversified debt, and these liabilities must be weighed against the value of the assets acquired. My personal belief is that both Diversified and Berkshire shareholders will benefit from the merger, but I will vote for the merger only if a majority of the shares, which are voted by other shareholders of each company, are voted to approve it. Experience indicates that earning forecasts frequently are very wrong. For what it is worth, my own estimates indicate that the merger would produce some improvement in per share operating earnings for Berkshire stockholders. Diversified's 60 stockholders presently own a non-marketable security condition the merger would cure. Although not quantifiable, I believe a further important benefit to be the simplification of ownership and management structures of Diversified and Berkshire. Tax and regulatory complications as well as investor perplexity are created by our existing structure, and your management is eager for the reduction and planning and operational problems which a Diversified Berkshire merger would achieve. A much more complete discussion is contained in the following pages. Sincerely, S. Warren E. Buffett. 1980 Illinois National Bank spinoff letter. Letter of November 26, 1980, which accompanied an exchange offer pursuant to which Berkshire accomplished the required divestiture of the interest in the Illinois National Bank and Trust Corporation of Rockford. Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, 1440 Kiewit Plaza, Omaha, Nebraska, 68131. Warren E. Buffett, Chairman, November 26, 1980. To the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, the succeeding document describes an exchange offer involving stock of Rockford Bancorp, in which it holds the 97.7% of the Illinois National Bank and Trust Corporation of Rockford, formerly held by Berkshire Hathaway, and stock of Berkshire Hathaway. As you know, by statute, Berkshire is required to dispose of the bank before year end. The exchange plan which we adopted is relatively complex, and I urge you to read carefully the prospectus in its entirety so that you can make a fully informed decision as to how to respond to the offer. The purpose of this letter is to offer to you my views with respect to Berkshire Bancorp and the exchange offer. You can give it as little or as much weight to these views as you choose. We could have simply spun off the shares of Bancorp to our shareholders to a pro rata basis. The exchange plan adopted gives you all of the advantages of such pro rata spin-off, since if you so desire, you can be guaranteed a pro rata participation in both Bancorp and Berkshire. If you make this election, you will own exactly what you not now own, but you will have stock certificates in two companies rather than one. However, under the exchange plan, shareholders who prefer the prospects of one company over those of the others will have the opportunity to enhance their position in their favorite company by decreasing their relative interest in their less favorite company. In my opinion, this is a valuable option. It would not have been available without considerable tax cost to our shareholders if we had opted for a normal spin-off plan. Setting the exchange ratio, of course, was the tough part. Basically, it was my responsibility much more per share. Reported tangible book value and historical reported earnings come with the Bancorp stock. However, the Bancorp tangible book value would be reduced significantly, about 27% of September 30, 1980, if bonds of the bank carried amortized costs were instead carried at market value. The bank is a very good business, one of the best earning banks in the country, which because of the industry and the state in which it operates, its growth prospects were limited, and federal bank holding company statutes severely restrict the business of flexibility of Bancorp. See pages 26 to 28 of the prospectus. In my opinion, Berkshire is a better business with more strategic alternatives from which to choose. Berkshire holds sizable equity interest in business with a significant earning power, which is not reflected in its reported earnings. See pages 4 and the 40 of the prospectus. In evaluating Berkshire, however, I cannot ignore that non-reported earning power. So that's pretty much the choice, as it appears to me. Bancorp with much better numbers and good prospects, and Berkshire with good numbers and much better prospects. If you have a hard time making up your mind, I will consider my job well done. You will notice that under the plan, you can decide to increase, maintain, or reduce your proportional interest in each company. But if you go up proportionally in one, of course, you go down in the other. The only shareholders who doesn't have this option is me. If Berkshire holders collectively decide that I have made Bancorp the more attractive security to exchange elections, will cause my proportional interest in Bancorp to decrease and my interest in Berkshire to increase. If they decide the reverse, I will end up with a large interest in Bancorp and an interest in Berkshire that has less than my current approximately 44% interest. This technique embodies the world's oldest and most elementary system of fairly dividing an object. Just as when you were a child and one person cut the cake and the other got first choice, I've tried to cut the company fairly, but you get first choice as to which piece you want. Of course, one thing I can promise is that 10 years from now, one of the pieces is likely to look a whole lot larger than the other. Than the nature of an uncertain business world. Most of our acquisitions look either better or worse than originally projected within a couple of years after purchase. But viewed respectively, a share of Bancorp and a share of Berkshire now look like equivalent pieces of cake to me. One with more flour and the other with more frosting. I have one hope on this exchange offer, and that is more if the most of you either decide to participate on more than a pro rata basis in Bancorp, or alternatively decide to stay entirely with Berkshire. Bancorp's corporate life will be simplified if it has a relatively small number of shareholders, most of whom have significant investment rather than a large number of holders who have elected pro rata participation and then hold relatively inconsequential amounts of Bancorp compared to their Berkshire holdings. But the choice is up to you. Both should be decent investment. Sincerely, Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, by Warren E. Buffett, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer. 1983, Nebraska Berkshire Mart purchase letter. Referred to in the 2013 letter to shareholder Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, 1140 Kiewit Plaza, Omaha, Nebraska 68131, August 30, 1983. Ms. Rose Blumkin family, Omaha, Nebraska. You own 100% of the outstanding stock of Nebraska Berkshire Mart Incorporated, NFM, which operates a remarkably successful furniture and appliance retailing business from a single large warehouse and selling location approximately 43 acres, including surrounding land, held for expansion in West Omaha. Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, Berkshire, has long admired what you have accomplished together and hereby propose to purchase from you 90% of such outstanding stock for $55,350,000 cash. All of the 10% outstanding stock not sold to Berkshire will be retained by Ms. Louis Blumkin and his sons, and Berkshire, concurrently with its purchasers of NFM stocks, will make arrangement with Louis Blumkin and his sons and sons as specified in Exhibit A attached hereto. The closing will occur immediately after satisfaction of the legal requirements of the Hart-Scott-Rodino amendments to the U.S. antitrust law, which Berkshire will pursue proper cooperation and will accomplish as rapidly as possible. This will no doubt be a mere formality, about 100% sure to occur within 50 days after you accept Berkshire's proposal, because Berkshire has no interest in any other furniture or appliance business, and consequently Berkshire purchases of NFM stock will cause no increase in anyone's entirety share of the furniture or appliance business in any market. If the Hart-Scott-Rodino delay turns out to exceed 50 days of the purchase price of the NFM stock, will increase at a rate of 12% per annum during any delay period in excess of 50 days, but exceeding 90 days after acceptance. In the event Hart-Scott-Rodino delay exceeds 90 days, which Berkshire considers inconceivable, either side may its option terminate all obligations to close the transaction. At the closing, each of the stockholders of NFM will warrant that good title of such stockholder's stock is transferred to Berkshire, and to Louis Blumkin will certify to Berkshire that, to the best of his knowledge and belief, Berkshire is acquiring 90% of the outstanding stock of NFM, and NFM has no obligation, contingent or otherwise, to issue additional shares. And two, that income tax return together with incorporated accounting data of NFM and its wholly owned subsidiary, which owns part of the approximately 43 acres partially vacant on which NFM conducts warehousing and retailing operations for the fiscal year ended 1/31/82, a copy of which has been furnished Berkshire, fairly represents the consolidated operations of NFM during first fiscal year and its balance sheet condition at the end thereof. And since 1/31/82, of business operations of NFM have not been successful in this fiscal year ended 1/31/82, B, all transactions except for the purchase of two real estate parcels described below of the NFM have been in the ordinary course of conducting and expanding its business. C, balance sheet. The condition of NFM has improved roughly as disclosed in its unaudited balance sheet of 7/31/83, a copy of which has been furnished to Berkshire. And D, no dividends have been declared or paid by NFM between 7/31/83 and the closing date. 5, immediately after closing, Berkshire will cause NFM to offer to sell for cash at present value agreed to be $1 million to a former NFM stockholders pro rata, or such former NFM stockholders may otherwise specify two parcels of real estate in Omaha, which change the plans by NFM, make it necessary for anticipated operations. 6, if the foregoing meets your approval, kindly return counterparts of this letter signed or on behalf of stockholders of NFM, which will constitute the letter of contract between stockholders in Berkshire. Yours very truly, Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, Warren E. Buffett, Chairman. Accepted. Name and signature of NFM stockholder, Ms. Rose Blumkin. Date of acceptance, 1983. Outstanding shares of NFM, 20%. Louis Blumkin on behalf of himself and family, 1983, 20%. Frances Batt on behalf of herself and family, 1983, 20%. Cynthia Schneider on behalf of herself and family, 1983, 23%. Sylvia Chon on behalf of herself and her family, 1983, 20%. Nebraska Furniture Mart Statement of Assets and Liabilities, December 31, 1946. Assets, current assets, cash on hand, $5, 0. Accounts receivable, $6, 7,007.0. Receivable, 1. Less reserve, $660. For bad debts, $162.58, $844.43. Inventory, $34, $95. $1,544.43, $650.00. Fixed assets, furniture and fixtures, $42.85. Leasehold improvements, $22,787.90. Truck, $1,565.35. $24,396.10. Lesser server depreciation, $5,590.98, $18,805.18. Other assets, loan receivable, Simon Jewelry Corporation, $12,000. Total, $116,349.55. Liabilities, current liabilities, First National Bank overdraft, $9,730.54. Accounts payable, $20,612.55. Accrued taxes, $2,742.05. Loans payable, Cynthia Snyder, $3,000. Norman Bat, $2,000. Bet Megzamin, $2,000. Omaha National Bank, $4,000. $11,000. $44,085. Partners Capital and Invited Profit balance January 1, 1946, $57,460.27. Net profit for year 1946, $29,884.42. $87,344.69. Less withdrawals, $15,080.28. Balance December 31, 1946, $72,264.41. Total $116,349.55. Nebraska Furniture Mart profit and loss statement year ended December 31, 1946. Net sales $575,096.47. Cost of sales inventory beginning to $22,789.00. Purchases $457,834.81. Freight $17,186.27. Fabrication and installation $9,730.72. $507,540.80. Inventory $34,650. Cost of sales $472,890.80. Gross profit $102,205.67. Less expense accounting and legal $548.29. Advertising $5,760.19. Provision for bad debts $3,777.63. Bank charges $40.43. Car and truck expense $2,000.54. Commissions $434.74. Depreciation $3,770.36. Donations $1,067.50. Drayage $57.17. Dues and subscriptions $49.00. Fuel $1,175.10. General expense $3,836.76. Insurance $1,543.49. Interest $630.52. Light, power, and water $1,384.09. Maintenance and repair $222.25. Postage $256,839. Rent $294.00. Salaries $40,288.00. Sign rental $600. Stationery supplies $659.57. Taxes $1,062.60. Payroll taxes $1,042.78. Telephone and telegraph $1,141.26. Travel $1,887. $1,887,060. Total expenses $81.68. Operating profit $20,684.99. Add other income. Purchase discounts $5,409.33. Carrying charges $3,790.1. $9,199.43. Net profit $29,884.42. 2001 9/11 letters to managers. Shortly after the September 11th terrorist attack, Berkshire Chairman Warren E. Buffett sent a letter to the CEO of each Berkshire operating business. The letter is reproduced below. Memo. To Berkshire Hathaway managers, the all-stars from Warren E. Buffett, date September 26, 2001. The last few weeks have been tough times for us, all of in our personal lives and for many of us in our business activities. At Berkshire, we have estimated our September 11 insurance loss was $2.2 billion. We've labeled this a guess because that's all it is. It will be many years before we can tell the world within a narrow range what the figure was. A very high percentage of the loss occurred in our U.S. insurance companies with a balance in German and UK entities. Because we have regularly paid very large amounts of U.S. income taxes, we will bear 65 of the cost applicable to the U.S. operations. The government will bear 35%. Many insurers will not have their loss mitigated in this manner, and some may not survive, though. Much of our loss will be paid very soon. Significant payments in the liability area will take a considerable time to settle. Even with tax recoveries, our loss is huge. Nevertheless, it's one Berkshire can easily bear. We have long been in the super cat business, and we have been prepared both financially and psychologically to handle them when they occur. This won't be our last hit, though we fervently hope disaster in the future arise from natural causes rather than be man-made. We also would hope that they would be of lesser magnitude. What should you be doing in running your business? Just what you always do. Widen the moat, build enduring competitive advantage, delight your customers, and relentlessly fight costs. With the exception of insurance pricing and coverages, almost operating decisions that made sense a month ago make sense today. For my part, I'll keep looking for sensible acquisition and continue to manage our resources so that Berkshire remains a financial rock of Gibraltar. I'm sure we're in a recession, probably a relatively deep and extended one, but they are a part of business life and we are prepared. In short, you do the managing and I'll do the worrying. That's the division of labor that's worked for us in the past. It will continue to work well in the future. Thanks as all for your great job. All of you do that in turn makes my job so easy. Warren. P.S. If you wish, share this message with any of your associates.